think that atheists seem to, at least some of them, seem to be obsessed with Christianity and just kind of like paying attention to that. And since we're a pretty vocal group of Christians that are really pushing our narrative, and I think that we sincerely believe the Bible, and atheists don't like the Bible in many cases, that we would kind of be attractive to someone that maybe doesn't like the Bible.
Is that fair? Is that,
I don't know,
your
do you have a different
assessment too?
idea?
Something different?
Yeah, and I also think that it probably has something to do with the fact that what we preach is not popular anymore, but it is normal and biblical Christianity that's actually from the Bible. And so, but in modern day society, what we preach seems radical because there's not a lot of people preaching like we preach.
Which thing do you think is radical, though? Like, it's not the biblical preaching, because there's, even if they're not all like your churches, there's no shortage of churches that are preaching conservative Christianity, whatever you think the correct version of Christianity should be. And most of those I would not pay much attention to at all.
Well, I think that, I'm not saying it's radical, but I think that people like you or other people perceive it as radical because it's not preached by a lot of different people. So it looks like we're a microcosm of people that preach the way that we do. So it's not that people aren't preaching conservative things, but what we're preaching are things that people are afraid to touch on. They're afraid they're going to lose their tithers. They're afraid that they're going to lose, that, you know, people are going to be mad at them and rage against them. They're afraid that, you know, they won't even put their sermons online. A lot of these people, if they are preaching what we preach, then they're hiding those sermons so that they don't get any persecution for what they're saying, because, you know, the Bible says what it says. I mean, you're kind of doing your own little Bible study right now where you're basically bashing everything that it says. And then, you know, you haven't gotten to Leviticus 20 yet, I don't think, but.
No, I did.
Oh,
I covered it.
You
yeah.
did?
It was a while back, but I
okay,
did.
well, I guess I didn't catch that one, but I mean, it does. I mean, you're not using the King James when you go through. I think you're using the NIV or something. But
yes.
But the King James, you know, that Leviticus 20:13, it says what it says. So like
you're talking about the death.
If a man lies with, you know, mankind as he lies with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination, they shall surely be put to death. That's a capital crime according to God's law in the Bible. So, you know, when we preach that, we're not preaching it as in we think that Christians should go out and carry out those, and we never say that Christians should do those things, but we preach that if God was in charge of, the government right now, if his laws were being enforced, or if man was doing what they're supposed to be doing as far as, you know, as far as God's concerned, then they would be enforcing those laws. And in fact, in America, those laws were enforced at one time. So
I want to go back to that in a second. Let me correct, I think, something Pastor Shelley said, which is, it's not just, for me, it's not that it's preaching a certain type of Christianity or anything like that. What fascinates me, to the point where I'm like, I've probably seen more of your sermons than I think a lot of other people have, is because it seems like you are so obsessed with something like Leviticus 20:13 at the expense of other supposed sins, and the way you go about doing it makes me fear for what may happen, because I know that neither of you are suggesting people should go out and take the law into their own hands. I know you don't say that. I don't know that everyone who listens to you gets the same takeaway, and I genuinely worry that someone's going to hear that and hear other things you have said and take the law into their own hands despite what you say, because they know that if they did that, even though you wouldn't necessarily say, yep, that was the right thing to do, you would treat that person as basically someone who did something right for the cause or something.
Well, let me ask a question, because I feel like when someone listens to our sermons as a whole, like they listen to the whole sermon,
and not a 1 minute soundbite.
Yeah, they're not getting that message. Like, it's very clearly caveated or maybe explained or put in its proper context. Whereas a lot of clips that are taken, especially you've made certain clips, and I always like your clips, so I just have to be honest. But
and can I say, sorry to interrupt you, I've gotten plenty of pushback from my own side saying you're giving these people a platform. Doing this right now is giving guys like you a platform, and I shouldn't be doing it for that reason. So I know you probably like some of those clips, but sorry, go on.
I'm just saying I like them objectively. Even if they didn't get attention, I just liked. Usually you clip out some of the funnest parts to listen to of a sermon, in my opinion. But if you're worried about people taking our words out of context, it almost seems like you're exacerbating that issue. Like you're almost
by only focusing on those things.
Right, by kind of cherry picking maybe some really extreme statements. That might actually be what you're kind of worried about, is someone taking those words too literally. I mean, have you ever thought about that? Or is there even possibly retribution in the sense that we've had protests, we've had people that are mad at us? I mean, there's been times where our voicemail is getting a new voicemail every 30 seconds, and people saying that they literally want to rape my family, murder me, hurt every single person in our congregation. Like, if you put a clip out and someone drove by and shot a lot of the women and children of our churches, would that make you feel bad?
Yeah, of course. But the reason I'm concerned, talk about the Pulse nightclub shooting.
Sure.
That was, I think, 49 people massacred. I mean, feel free. In your words, what was your reaction to that?
I mean, I didn't really have much of a reaction, to be honest, because I think in the news, like, people are constantly dying, right? And I think that most people are pretty just, like, dead to that. And I'm not saying that
they're numb to that.
They're just numb to the fact that people are dying constantly, and especially it's in Florida. I don't even live in Florida. And here's the thing. Because I have a prejudice against homosexuals, I believe that they are reprobate and that they hate God and they have no chance of being saved. If one of them died, it doesn't really make me feel sad. So, like, if I read in the news in Arizona, there was a cop killer that was on the loose, and he was running, and the cops found him, but they couldn't quite get to him, and some regular citizens just ended up having a confrontation. They shot and they killed him. Like, I didn't feel sad that cop killer was killed, because to me he's justified. Like, he deserves death anyways for the crimes that he's committed. So it didn't really cause me any sadness. So, like, when I hear about that, I just think, like, oh well, I mean, that's not a bad thing necessarily. I'm not pro people going into businesses and shooting people up. I think that that's wrong. I would never encourage someone to do something like that. But at the same time, I wouldn't encourage someone to just shoot someone randomly in a parking lot. But if someone's confronting you trying to kill you, and there's like an issue, and they defend themselves, and it happens to be a cop killer, it's just kind of like, well, it seems like justice was served. So, from my perspective, it just seems like it's maybe God's way of intervening. When man won't execute his death penalty, sometimes God may intervene, albeit it's not conventional. And if that person happens to die, well, then I'm not sad about it.
I tried to take some notes of things you had said, because I think it goes beyond that. There was a guy in 2021. He was killed at a pride parade. One guy, and I think it was someone drove a car through the parade or something. You personally said, it's great when trucks accidentally go through those parades. We can hope for more in the future. I think it's great. I hope they all die. That's what I'm worried about, because you're not saying, hey, everyone in church, go get in your truck and do that. But if someone did that, you're going to praise that action, because you're not.
Well, it was an accident.
That one was an accident.
If you read the article, it was
Pulse was not an accident.
It was a homosexual accidentally ran over another homosexual and killed them. So, like, from my perspective, like, that to me is a good outcome, because it's not someone doing this in anger or hatred. It's not someone going and putting the law into their own hands. It's just someone dying that deserves death.
Pulse nightclub is then.
There wasn't a victim, in my opinion.
Forget the accident side of it. Pulse nightclub, not an accident.
Not an accident.
But when that happened, you're happy with that outcome.
I wouldn't say I was necessarily happy. I'm just, to me, these people deserve death, and the fact that they are put to death doesn't make me sad.
But if people are hearing that, even in context, I mean, if they're hearing that message, their takeaway, my fear, is that they're going to say, okay, if I did something like that, they're going to treat me as a hero in this place.
But do you have any proof that we treated this guy as a hero? I don't even know the guy's name. the guy that went in that club. He's a Muslim, so I would actually preach against him and say, like, he's going to go to hell, and he's just as evil as those people because he committed murder.
While at the same time celebrating the fact that the victims are no longer here.
Well, sometimes God uses bad people to take other bad people out.
But again, what's the takeaway message from that to your congregation? Because this is what I'm worried about. This is why I pay attention to things you guys say. It's not because you think homosexuality is a sin, which plenty of churches believe.
Yeah, many.
It's the idea that, hey, it's not just that someone who is gay died or was murdered. It's that that's a good thing. And when you're saying in any context, that's a good thing, you're sending a message that if something bad happens to them, hey, if it's an accident even, like, whatever, it's fine because the outcome was what we wanted. That, to me, is concerning because I don't think either of you two would ever do that. I can't say the same for the people who go to your churches. I don't know them. I don't know what type of people are coming to the churches.
Well, but think about it. Like, my church has been in existence since 2014. His church has been in existence for several years. We've had hundreds of people come to our churches. No one's ever done that. So if our message was really communicating that, wouldn't you think there would be at least some incidents to like reference, like, hey, these people
I got one for you.
Okay,
but...
well, let's wait for a second. But I'm just saying, from my church perspective, I don't know of a single member of my church that's even harassed, like physically harassed a homosexual. Again, I always tell them to just stay away from them because, from our perspective, from my viewpoint, homosexuals are very likely to commit pedophile acts and to hurt children and to rape them and molest them. And that's happening in our country regularly. There's a lot of children that are being taken advantage of. And so from my perspective, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, like, I'm against pedophilia and rape and child trafficking and then not be also potentially happy when those individuals are brought to justice or potentially taken out of society. Because if I truly love children and I don't want those things to happen, then I should desire to put into place measures like Leviticus 20:13 or other things that would stop that. Our government's not doing that, of course. And, if that was on the ballot, I would vote for it. But at the same time, if someone dies that is, in my view, worthy of death, I'm not going to be disappointed or saddened by that. I think that people celebrate when Osama bin Laden died. I think people celebrate when Nazis died. I think people celebrate when they are perceived enemies or people that are committing horrible acts are put to death or killed, albeit no matter what means. And so that's the same viewpoint that I have.
The difference, though, one, to compare those guys you just mentioned to not pedophiles who have done horrible things, but to people who are gay and have not done those things, that's a leap that scares me. Because you're not saying, like, let's go after people who have molested children or something because they have done something horrible. You're saying, no, it's that those people in Pulse nightclub or something, or any place. It's, no, what did they do? What did they do to kids? Nothing.
We don't know. That's the thing.
You don't know. That's the point.
We
they
could
probably
assume,
didn't do anything.
Let's just assume that none of them ever did anything like that, okay?
But you are still
I still think they should be
celebrating
put to death because I believe if they're given the opportunity, they would act on that.
Based on what?
And it's similar to the same idea of murder, right? When someone commits murder, it's an evidence of the fact that they're more likely to commit murder again in the future. And so the reason why the death penalty was, I believe, brought into the Bible in Genesis chapter 9 is to continue society. We need to put murderers to death so they're not incentivized to keep murdering or keep hurting people. And
then
the Bible
we have
teaches
the justice system. Like, that's the thing. If you want a stronger penalty for a crime, okay, fine, we can have that discussion.
Well, homosexuality is a crime, though.
That
according
is not
to the
a crime. According to the Bible, fine, but it's in our justice system. If you want to say we should make the laws stronger on certain things, that's a different argument to be having. To say that people who are gay, who have not been convicted, who have not, as far as you know, done anything, deserve that same penalty as a Nazi, as someone like Osama bin Laden. That is a leap that, again, I am afraid of what message that sends to people who hear that, because you're not, first, the vigilante justice is scary, but the idea that that person deserves some sort of punishment, not because they did something, in which case we have ways of dealing with that, but on the hypothetical theory that they might do something, like, where is that? Anyone is a hypothetical, anything horrible.
Sure, obviously, even straight people
people's...
could be a child molester. And again, it's not...
Who could have thunk?
Yeah, of course.
Like, yeah.
Obviously, the Catholic Church is filled with child molesters, and there's a lot of preachers, there's a lot of pastors all over this country, because the Bible teaches that it's kind of a result of being a reprobate. It's someone that hates God, doesn't want to get saved, doesn't believe the gospel.
You don't think
they're
any
given
Christian
over to vile affections
has ever done anything like that?
Yeah, he just said that.
No, I don't think any. I don't think anybody.
They're not
real Christians. Not saved
I don't think
people.
someone who's saved is capable of molesting a child. But
you're just defining it that way, because as soon as they do something wrong, you're like, well, that person wasn't a real Christian.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, you would have to
seems
show
like
me an example for me to even be challenged on that worldview. But that is my worldview, because I think, like, there's certain sin. I'm tempted with all kinds of sin. I could be tempted with virtually anything except for things that the Bible describes as being vile affections. Things like being a homosexual or molesting a child. Those are just repulsive to me. So I don't see how that's possible for a normal saved person to desire that. To me, the Bible teaches in Romans 1 that that's a punishment, that they've been given over to have those desires, which are unnatural, and to go against nature, as the Bible describes. And so therefore, it's a result of someone having already rejected God in their heart, have no desire to be saved, and will not be saved.
I feel like you are just saying, as soon as someone crosses the line to do something indefensible in your view, that person is no longer in your club. Like, it's very convenient.
Well, there's plenty of people that aren't in my club or go to my church that aren't a reprobate. Like, right? I mean, we're talking about defining...
But they're only a reprobate when they've crossed the line. Like, it's very easy to say, look, if y'all just followed what I said, everything would be great. But the second you do something that has crossed the line, well, you weren't listening to me, clearly.
Well, it doesn't matter about
everybody.
me. Because Romans 1 tells us that being a reprobate is a manifestation through being a homosexual. So, like, being a homosexual is, according to the Bible, something that's against nature. It's something that no one would normally do or naturally do. The only reason they do it is because they're being punished for being a reprobate. So it's an obvious sign.
Is there any homosexuality in the animal kingdom?
Yeah, because the Bible compares homosexuals to animals specifically. It calls them brute beasts.
Dogs.
And dogs is the number one.
Sows.
But I'm saying
sows.
Animals did not reject God.
Well, it's just showing like an animal style behavior where they have no conscience.
But
so
if
that's what a
nature,
reprobate is someone that has no conscience, basically. So they don't have any. They have no idea what's right and wrong anymore, and so they do things that a normal person without a seared conscience could never do. Someone that's normal, there's certain things that just are gross to them. So like eating vomit or eating things that smell bad. Like, I don't believe a normal person can want to do that. But someone that has a seared conscience, I think that they could even literally do that. You see this on, like, Fear Factor, and you see different shows where people are doing just incredibly gross things that are unimaginable. And I believe those people are probably a reprobate. I can't prove that. But also, when you look at this homosexuality, because that's an unnatural affection, and because of, history, science, everything else, it proves to the fact that these people don't love God. I mean, I've knocked on a lot of doors. I've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of homosexuals. I've given the gospel to a lot of homosexuals, and they've never wanted to get saved. And that's not because I had some prejudice. In many cases, I didn't know. I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt. But they even manifest to them myself. They tell me that they don't want that, or they don't want to be saved, or they mock God. And so, it's anecdotal. But at the same time, if homosexuals were wanting to get saved like every other person and didn't have this unnatural affection, I would assume that handfuls of them would get saved or would have a desire to.
All the Christians who would say, I accept the divinity of Christ and all that, who are gay, who are lesbians, who are trans, none of them are they lying to themselves, all of them? Are they just bad Christians? What's the deal with them?
They're just making God up in their own image. So it's not that they, and in fact, here's the thing. Plenty of people can acknowledge the divinity of Jesus Christ and still not be saved. I mean, the Catholic Church acknowledges that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. They acknowledge that Jesus was God manifest in the flesh. They have a lot of doctrines that I agree with as far as the virgin birth, But they take a lot of these doctrines to an extreme that I don't agree with, of course. But the Catholic Church believes in work salvation. And when I run into people that are homosexual that say they believe in Jesus or love God, they all point to a works-based salvation. I've never heard one explain that salvation is by faith alone or by grace alone. And even if there was maybe that one rare duck, I would think that they're probably lying.
I want to go back to you said, give me an example of someone who in the churches. So this is something that we've talked about a little bit. There was a guy last year who, Tyler Dinsmore, who was arrested because he threatened to kill people at a pride parade. There were, he described you, Pastor Thompson, as his pastor. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you basically said, I don't know this guy, something more or less along those lines. But like, how much responsibility then do you have for what someone like that does?
Well, I mean, you said that he threatened. I mean, what
he
I
was
saw
arrested,
is that he said
he was arrested for threatening.
What I saw, like,
guns.
I don't really know a lot about all the evidence that they have. I've looked into the case lately to see if there's any progress in it. I haven't seen any progress in it. But from what I saw, he just said, talk me out of it. He didn't say, I'm going to kill everybody or anything like that. So, like, and I think that someone's innocent until proven guilty. So he still has.
Except for gay people.
No. Hold on. So, and I'll just tell you this, that he, I actually kicked him out of my church. So he's no longer.
Because why?
For other reasons, but.
Not connected to that.
Well, yeah,
event.
because I'm not gonna judge somebody before they're found guilty,
But you guys judge gay people before they have done.
But here's the thing: if they say I'm a homosexual, then they're saying it to them. They're already telling themselves that they're telling us that they're guilty. So if it's
they're guilty of being a homosexual,
and the Bible says that we're not supposed to allow them to come. I mean, the kings of old just broke their houses down and drove them away and told them that they're not allowed to come to the house of the Lord. So we're not going to let them come to the house of the Lord. We're not going to allow them to come and be around our children. They are, but if they haven't committed pedophilia yet, they're going to. They're going to.
If given an opportunity.
If given an opportunity. And
what's
if
the
they
opportunity?
don't, they still would want to.
Let me return to that question in a second.
The opportunity is adopting a kid. Like these guys that are adopting children and holding them on their chest like they're going to breastfeed them or something.
Hold that thought for a second. I do want to come back to this. I want to come back to that point. But going back to this guy, like it sounds to me like you're saying, well, he didn't kill anyone. So
he didn't.
Yeah, he didn't because he was stopped. But like, what's the alternative then? Wait for him to kill some people and then we'll take action?
Look, when I said I didn't know him, I really meant that. He had visited our church a couple times, and, he did exhibit some strange behaviors, but I can't just not let people come to my church because of strange behaviors. So there was already things that I just red flagged him for anyway, so it's not like I didn't. So and look, I never preach for someone to do those things, so if someone's getting that from me, then they didn't get that from me. They're making these things up in their own mind.
I accept that. Look, you should take everyone in.
I don't
in
say
your
to
church.
do that. I've never said to do that.
I'm not accusing you to tell people to do that.
I know, but like if he gets that idea, he didn't get that idea from me. If
How
he
come
came
you
to
can
my
dismiss
church,
that so easily, though?
Because I don't teach that. I mean, Pastor Anderson's been a pastor for 18 years. Okay. Has anybody of his congregation ever committed any crimes like these?
But are we just waiting for someone to do it then?
But you're assuming this is going to happen, and so you like put these clips on, and you say, "Hate preacher says, all gays should be killed," we never say gays, we say, but
he probably doesn't want to get censored.
Right,
in all fairness.
Oh, okay, but like
or use an offensive word.
With all due respect, you're saying I'm just quoting you, but we don't say that. You say all gays should be murdered, or you'll say things like that, and that's not what we're saying. Do you know the difference between capital punishment and murder? Do you know the difference? Can you define?
I want to go back to that too. Sorry, I'm not done with the previous point yet.
It's okay. Yeah.
I will get to that. But this
I want
is
you to come back and answer that though, please.
Sure. Yes. In that same year that guy was arrested before he did anything, there was a shooting in Colorado at Club Q, a gay bar. I have that quote too. Like, am I sad that 5 homos got shot? No, I'm not sad at all. I think it's a good thing they're not here anymore to molest kids. That was your exact quote. But again, first of all, those victims were not the victims there. They were not drag performers. Not that I think there was anything wrong with that. The event was for adults specifically. There was no evidence those victims did anything wrong. But again, the thing I'm quoting here is that you're happy to see that they're dead.
Who committed the crime?
I don't remember in that one.
It was
Who cares? Like, then that person should be sentence punished if he hadn't killed himself already. But I'm saying, go after the criminals who have done stuff. But the victims,
but you're using an example.
There's no
of
empathy.
Someone. Did that really listen to Pastor Thompson and get that idea? Like that seems kind of absurd to suggest.
But here's a guy who got arrested before he did something, and you're basically saying, I'm wiping my hands clean of that guy.
Well, it's because I really didn't know him. So I had Oregon Public Broadcasting, which is like in NPR or maybe some. Well, I think it's connected to, it's a government basically type broadcasting.
They
group.
get federal funding, probably.
Yeah. So I mean, he was fairly fair with the interview that he interviewed me about Tyler Dinsmore. But here's what I think, that they're directly trying to connect my preaching to him. That they've been trying to do this for a long time.
It's not hard to connect the dots.
But here's the thing, that he drove to my church from 4.5 hours away twice. And I literally didn't. So the day that he went soul winning with me, I rarely talked to him because I was giving the gospel to other people. It was just like, I didn't know him.
Does it bother you that a guy
true
like that
I didn't know him? Yeah, it's true. I didn't know him. He came to my church a couple times. Does that mean he's my church member? But that's what, you directly tried to connect me in your article about it.
He said you're his pastor.
Yeah, but does that make it true?
I mean, is it not true?
Is it true? Was I his pastor if he visited my church twice? Does that make me,
Does
what
it bother
I believe
you
a church
that
member is someone that comes
you
on a
said
regular basis?
You said this guy had a bunch of red flags that you saw separate from all this stuff. Does it bother you?
As he came later, yes, I did see those things.
Does it bother you that he was attracted to your church?
Well, it bothers me that he's connected to my church and it's directly trying to connect me to him when I don't agree with if he did do that crime, which, just saying talk me out of it to me isn't a crime, but and apparently
they had reason to believe he was going to go through with it, which is why he was arrested.
Well, but people get arrested there was a guy that got arrested in Pennsylvania for just saying, his First Amendment rights by a police officer, and they locked him up and threw him in jail because he was at a
what does it say about those people? This goes back to the point I was making earlier, which is if someone like that, if he drove 4 hours to come to your church or something, why do you think he was attracted to your church?
Well, lots of weirdos are attracted to churches, and people that are distressed and having problems come into churches, people that are bad come into churches.
There are churches everywhere. And
but here's the thing, that would be,
yours.
What if I said someone listens to your podcast and regularly, and they maybe even subscribe to you? I don't know if that's possible, but they say they subscribe to you or something, and they look at one of our articles and they drive into a church and shoot and kill people. Is that really your fault?
I'll answer that for you, because I think that has happened once, where someone who did some sort of crime, if you look at his likes on Facebook or something, and there were many, I was in that list. And then what I would do in that situation is, one, let me see if I've ever had any conversations with this person. The answer was no. And then the question is there anything I may have written or said that could have pointed this guy in the direction to think that what he did was okay? And when I did that, it's like, I cannot find anything that I've said. I can't find anything I've ever written that would have pointed anyone in that direction. And I think if you look at the broader scope of everything I've done, I think that holds true. So I am able to live with that. I didn't do anything that this guy would have found okay. In fact, I will go out of my way to condemn it repeatedly so that anyone listening knows I would never support anything like that. I don't hear that, though.
But that seems like the same viewpoint we have, because if one of my church members committed a crime like that, I would say that they shouldn't commit that crime and that was wrong. So I think that that's the same thing. And I don't think it's fair to hold public figures responsible for what some potential crazy individual may do, just because they happen to listen to some of their preaching or visit their blog or read their articles or watch their videos. Like, everyone has to take personal responsibility for their actions. And I don't think that it's fair to assume that any one individual is directly responsible, because there's multiple multiple factors here. I mean, what they're reading online, There's a lot of websites that are very radicalized online. There's other individuals in this person's life.
And what's your fear from them seeing something radical online? Because they're getting the idea from somewhere.
Well, I just don't believe in thought crimes. So, like, if someone commits a crime, they're held responsible. But, I don't think that the individuals, unless they're having direct calls of violence, like if they're calling for violence directly and you can prove that, or they maybe assisted that person in some way, financially, verbally, or counseled them, and you can prove that, then that person should also be held responsible. But just listening to general preaching or taking out of context or taking your post out of context, like, people shouldn't be held responsible for that.
Hey, and when he was arrested, they wanted me to do like some funding to help pay for his attorneys and lawyer fees, and since I didn't know what happened, I didn't do that. I didn't just jump to his side and say, yeah, just do whatever you want. Like, I didn't know that when it happened, I didn't know like what the truth was about the matter. And so here's the thing that I do: I don't judge the matter before I hear it. And so I don't know exactly all the details even of the case. I actually thought about just buying you have to pay for the case online or whatever, and then I just didn't do it. So
I mean, sometimes church members do things that we don't like, and it makes us look bad, or it makes Christ look bad, and that's unfortunate, and we don't want that to be the case. And I think that it's pretty clear from most of the sermons we preach on these topics that there are clear statements in those sermons that say, look, we're not saying do this, we just want the government to change, we want them to go back to older laws they used to enforce. And so I'm not going to feel bad. I'm not going to feel personally responsible if someone does something that I totally disagree with and have preached against verbally.
Yeah.
But if someone breaks the law, if someone does something that you say, I wasn't telling you to do that, it would be a lot easier to legitimately wipe your hands clean of it if it wasn't so damn easy to make that connection between their actions and what you celebrate. Like, the reason they're making those connections is because we know what you have said in the past. Like, had the guy gone through and killed people,
but I didn't say to do that, though.
No, you didn't say to do that, but you would have been like, yeah, but it's a good thing that happened.
Well, I'm saying it's a good thing that they're not around to molest children. That's what I said.
And that's my point. Like, they didn't molest children. You're just
you
like
don't know
making
that,
up a thing.
But you don't know that.
So going back to the adoptive parents and stuff, I'm trying to figure out. You want to go back to some old school code of some old school law.
Well, in 2003,
policy.
It was illegal to be a homosexual in the state of Texas. So until
sodomy was illegal.
Yes, homosexuality was
being gay is not
a crime.
Being gay is not a crime. Acting on it was in Texas.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Committing the act of homosexuality was a crime. You're right. Being gay wouldn't be a crime by itself.
Right.
But if you go further back, even into the 1800s, there was still states that had statutes of the death penalty specifically for sodomy, and that just slowly weaned itself. It was like 20-year prison sentence.
I'm not arguing that didn't happen.
So I'm just saying I would believe that our government should go back to.
Tell me how that works. Hypothetically, let's say you're in Texas. If their legislature wanted to pass a law that they could get around Supreme Court precedents or whatever, how would that even work in practice? I think you said earlier, you would vote for it if it was on the ballot or something.
Yes.
How would that work in practice? What would you like to see the government do?
So I think we'd have to first overturn the Lawrence versus Texas ruling.
That's the sodomy ruling.
Which would be a trigger law for Texas because they still have on the books, I think it's Texas Penal Code 21.06 is the crime for committing homosexuality. I would want them to then pass new legislation changing the punishment to the death penalty specifically.
For people who have
committed the act of sodomy. So not being homosexual, but just if someone commits the act of sodomy with male or female with female, then they would be put to death. Of course, I believe in a fair trial. They should be given
let's
opportunity.
Say they did it. I won't argue that. Let's say they did it.
Yes.
There's no question of guilt. Let's say they have kids that they adopted or something.
Yes.
Like, how does that play out? How do we kill them? What happens to their kids? Like,
what happens to anybody's kids after they get killed? And like, if they're a murderer, what happens to their kids? Like, what happened to OJ's kids when he had to go to jail? I mean, what happened? And
Governor Perry put over 300. I think over 300 people to death.
Then didn't he end up going to jail for something else, right? But like, what happens to anybody's kids that gets,
Obviously, it's sad for kids to lose their parent for any reason. And
if your parent's a murderer, though, that is very different from two people having sex.
No, it's not.
Well, I agree that they're different, but according to the Bible, the death penalty is applied to about, and I preached a sermon on this, and I can't remember the exact number, maybe like 16, depending on how you define them, like 16 different crimes are worthy of the death penalty in the Old Testament, and I believe they should still be enforced today. And in fact, in the early colonies, they did have all of them except for adultery usually, which I still believe adultery should be put to death too. But, you said how? Well, the Bible uses stoning. A modern version of that to me is a gun. It's essentially a similar form of stoning in the sense that
and less painful.
It's probably less painful. So in that regard, it may be more efficient. So, the firing squad is a reasonable method. I don't think that it should be necessary, like any more painful than it has to be. Death obviously can be painful. But yeah, I think Texas should use the firing squad, and it should be immediate. It shouldn't be like 15 years down the road. We shouldn't, as taxpayers, have to wait for justice to be served. So, we don't need prisons the way that we have them today. I think there's a lot of things broken there. But yes, I believe that that's what should happen. And of course, I don't believe anybody should take the law in their own hands. Nobody should execute anyone without going through the proper channels, having a fair process, getting a chance for defense. There should be at least 2 or 3 witnesses. No one should ever be condemned based on one witness testimony. And so, that's God's system, and I think that it still works today.
Cliche question. If one of your kids came out as gay, what do you do at that point?
I would do the same thing. I don't believe my kids ever will be because I'm going to get them saved at a young age, and so I don't think it's possible. But even if it was, if my child committed murder or rape or was a serial killer or a homosexual, I would wish the law was equally enforced.
You would rather see, if your child was gay and acted on it, all right, death penalty for them too in an ideal world.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible even says a stubborn or rebellious child would be taken to the government and would be put to death, which to many people things even more extreme.
Which, by the way, you're both parents. I'm a parent.
Yes.
Kids rebel. Kids are stubborn. That's how kids work.
But it's talking about more like when it uses the example, it's like, he's a drunkard and a glutton and like
he's an adult child,
like an adult
that refuses to work and is just a menace to society. Will not hearken to anyone. Refuses to obey anybody's instruction.
Back up for a second. They're refusing to. I mean,
it's not like a 3-year-old that like refuses to clean their room. Or
okay,
something.
But if a parent has a 25-year-old kid or something, this happens all the time. Has a hard time getting a job, isn't getting a job or something. They're going through a rough time right now. That is a very real thing that happens all the time. That too, that also deserves.
No, I think the way you frame that doesn't sound right. I mean, this is someone that's like striking
very often either.
Yeah, I mean, this is someone that's striking their parents, cursing their parents, refusing to do anything productive. It's not like they're not even trying to get a job. It's not like they can't find a job because the economy's tough. It's like they're refusing to work. They're a glut. They're just drinking, causing problems. And so
I do not understand
that person's dangerous to society. I mean, think about it.
No. That person has issues. Probably. I wish they would. If they were my kids, it's like, no, I want you to do more. I do not see how that. I don't care what the Bible says. How does that rise to the level of death penalty?
Well, I mean, again, if someone is not willing to obey any authority in their life, that's going to cause serious problems in the society. And if the death penalty itself would not inspire someone to act appropriately, that's an extremely dangerous person. So according to God's law, they would be put to death. And again, that's probably the most extreme.
A hugely extreme case that probably didn't happen very often.
How do you know if someone is gay? If they're not confessing it to you? Because the laws in your ideal world are so stark.
It's pretty simple. They commit a homosexual act. I mean, that's...
Well, they look like a queer?
No, but
sound like a queer.
They dress like a queer. Probably a queer.
This is what you have said in your sermons, some variation of that. But that's the whole point. Like, not everyone is a stereotype.
That's true.
So what happens at that point? Because there are plenty of gay people you would not know standing next to you at a stall in the bathroom.
Some gay people don't look gay, sound gay, act gay. So, again, to me, it's someone that commits the act. If someone commits the act, then that's the line. Just like a murderer. How does someone murder? They killed someone. How is someone a liar? They lied. How is someone homosexual? They committed a homosexual act. I think that's pretty much the clear line. The only exception I would give is if someone was kind of doing it by force or perhaps they're drunk or taken advantage of. Like, there's sometimes people do things
so
that
if they have gay sex because they got drunk at a bar, you weren't of sound mind.
I'm going to say that some people will sometimes do things they're not aware of, because you can be blacked out. People, when they drink alcohol, can become so intoxicated they don't even know where they're at.
I find it funny that if they're drunk, which is a sin in your mind,
yes,
and if they're having gay sex, which is a sin in your mind, but they do both at the same time, they're spared.
No, that doesn't mean that they're spared. It just means that maybe perhaps they don't have to actually believe that, or they're not like that. They would be disgusted by their behavior when they became sober.
The Bible says that when they burn in their lust one toward another in Romans chapter 1, that's kind of the telltale sign. It's like when you have a cold. How do you know you have a cold? Your nose starts to run, your throat gets sore, or you start developing a cough, then you know you got a cold. The symptoms are telling you got a cough. Well, when you're a reprobate, the symptom is that you're burning in your lust towards the same gender. If you're a man, you're burning in your lust, and that's what you want is a dude. Like, that's the symptom that you're a reprobate, because you don't like women anymore. You want men. And that is not something that you're born wanting. You know, the studies and science even show that that's true. What? That you're not, because they do studies of twins, one's a queer and one's not. Then if they're exactly identical, science, it would seem to say that if they're exactly identical, then they would have this gay gene, supposedly. But that's been proven wrong.
Not how it works.
What? How do you know?
How's it work?
Are you gay?
I am not. But if you ask gay people, like, when did you turn on the switch to become gay? That's not how it happened. They will say, I was always this way. It's not something that turned on. Maybe I didn't realize it for a while, but all the signs add up. Different question, but I'm not trying to change the subject.
Sure. You can change it.
Which is, how many gay people do you know? And I wonder, I'm guessing it's low. And if you don't know people like that, if you don't talk to them because literally of all the stuff you're saying, maybe it's possible you're missing out on a lot of the assumptions you have.
Well, when you say no, I don't. That's kind of a relative term.
Are you close to people who are gay?
I would say I've ran into a lot of homosexuals from just soul winning. That's a very no. So that's like just a you met this person.
Sure, you knocked on their door, you talked to them, you found out they were gay.
There's people that I grew up with, so I went to school with, and maybe you had a suspicion, and now they've come out and they're officially homosexual. I also have worked with people that are homosexual before.
And do you talk to them, right? I mean, okay, so if you work with them, not the old acquaintance from school who you probably don't talk to much, but someone you work with.
I don't currently work with anybody like that, but in times past, I worked at Shelley's as a waiter. Yeah. And one of the other waiters was a homosexual, very open about it. And I was very nice to him.
Sure, it's a work environment.
He was nice to me. We would be considered friendly. And at that time, I didn't think that every homosexual was a reprobate. So I did have a little bit different viewpoint on that particular sin. I still thought it was gross.
I guess my question, if that happened, but the fact that you're saying you don't know people like that today who are actually part of your life.
I don't have anybody that's part of my life that's a homosexual.
And I'm wondering, the fact that you don't know anyone there who is correcting you on errors you are making in judgment or something like that.
I don't hang out with serial killers, rapists. There's a lot of people that don't hang out with Muslims. I don't have any active Muslim friends or anything like that. And I'm not asking Muslims to correct me on my Christian theology, because that's just kind of bizarre. I think that would be a strange worldview. Plus, even Christians that are in violation of 1 Corinthians 5, the Bible says not to have any fellowship with those people. So that would be people that are committing fornication, people that are drunkards, people that are committing idolatry or extortion or railing. Those people you're supposed to separate from your company as well. So I would be a hypocrite if I'm even hanging out with Christians who fall in those specific categories.
But every Christian falls short.
Everybody's a sinner, absolutely. But not everybody's committing the act of fornication. Not everybody's a drunkard. And people can abstain from those activities. And I believe our church is filled with people that are abstaining from those activities on a regular basis.
I forgot who said it, about the disobedient kids who are not working, whatever. We said, of course, we're not talking about children. We are talking about adults who are being rebellious.
Yes.
Right? Okay, here's a direct quote for you. about disobedient children. You know, you could squash rebellion how to squash rebellion in a public school today. Take the rebellious one out and stone him. I bet they'd shapen up pretty quick. That's about children who are acting up, which is a thing kids do.
Yeah, in the laws of Connecticut of 1673, they put the age for that statute in the Bible at 15 years old. Okay. I think that's probably pretty close to where I would agree with, maybe 16, 17, 18. I think that an 18-year-old young man in high school is still is an adult in a sense. They're still an adult child.
So in a righteous government, that kid could be executed for being disobedient.
Here's the thing, both parents have to want this. So according to the Bible, it's basically both parents. And here's the thing, parents have a natural affection towards their children. I believe that parents love their children more than anybody else. So if a parent themselves has recognized in their own child some kind of a devious nature, some sinister nature in this individual that's going to literally hurt and harm society, and it probably has already done that, probably already hurt their siblings or hurt animals or has done all kinds of misdemeanors and crimes and is getting drunk and just smiting his parents and cursing them and wishing that they would die. Like, this person has gotten to a point, to me, is way more extreme than what you were getting mad about what Tyler Dinsmore said about other individuals, where you said it seems like this guy's likely to commit a crime, and they arrested him.
That's not an opinion, though. That is why they arrested him.
I know. I'm just saying that would be similar to this in the sense that you're noticing a pattern with this individual and sensing the extreme danger, and so that person is brought into custody. And again, if they choose at any point to obey their parents, then it's off the table. It's just that they're even put in the position of, hey, if you're just not going to listen to your parents, you're going to do these things, then we would put you to death, and they still do it. It just shows that they're so broken that the death penalty is appropriate in that rare situation.
The judge would still have to make the decision. Like, they bring them to judges who would make that decision. So it's not like the parents could just willy-nilly go up and go, yeah, this little brat won't listen to us, so
it sounds like there is no room in that worldview for any sense of rehabilitation or anything like that.
No, most people, again, they're not rehabilitating. They are offering rehabilitation, and they're not hearkening. They're not receiving the treatment, in a sense.
This is true of, alcoholics, too. In the moment, yeah, they're not going to listen to you, but give them time. This is true of prisoners today.
Well, it's not saying an alcoholic. It's saying a stubborn and rebellious child that's smiting and cursing his parents. That's a different context than just being drunk. Drunkenness is a symptom of his particular issue. It's not the direct cause. It doesn't say put drunkards to death, because I don't believe that. It says that this kid is doing these activities. He's participating in that activity. So again, rehabilitation is great, and I think that a lot of people, the prodigal son,
but you can't rehab if you've murdered them. You've executed them.
Yeah, obviously at that point, it's the last straw, though. It's a serious process that people are going to take seriously and consider. And again, these are coming from their own parents. It's not coming from an outsider. And I believe that if every once in a while there was a child that was that extreme, if they were publicly executed, it may cause, generally speaking, children to fear their parents more and to fear the fact that, hey, I need to be a productive member of society. I need to obey my parents. And so, I believe that would be beneficial. Is
there any situation when the parents are wrong and the kids know better what they're doing?
Yes.
But that would be rebellion against the parents.
Yeah, the Bible's not saying just only like any level of rebellion. Every kid disobeys their parents. The Bible says foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. So according to the Bible, children are, of course, going to disobey. My children disobey me all the time. But they're not stubborn or rebellious. They do end up listening. They do hearken unto my rules. And I think 99.9% of children are all in that category. This is a rare, less than 0.1% that we're talking about. But that example is important.
But even like non-Christian families, have you ever heard someone say, well, that kid was just a bad seed? I mean, you've heard that in society, I'm sure. There's sometimes just kids that are just rotten and bad, and they grow up to be serial killers, and like he was saying, people that torture animals.
Or they turn out to be okay. They had a rough childhood or something.
But if you could prevent Jeffrey Dahmer, or if you could prevent some of these major serial killers, if they had been put to death at a young age and they hadn't committed the atrocities that they did, wouldn't you have said that would have been a net good?
No, because you can't predict what they're going to do in the future.
I'm saying I give you perfect hindsight. Would you agree that if a serial killer was put to death
could I go
earlier,
back in time and kill baby Hitler?
No, but Gacy, he was given multiple chances. He was caught being a sodomite first, and then he was like the exemplary, charmer in prison, and they let him out, and he just kept doing it, and then he's just like burying bodies underneath his house in Chicago or whatever. It's like men. So what was he?
I've lost the thread on this one.
Well, just that he was a sodomite. Like, I mean, it's obvious.
His problem
he was
wasn't that
murdering
he was
young
gay.
boys.
His problem is that he was a murderer.
Well, it was both.
It was both.
You've said, okay, I want to know where you guys get your news from.
Okay.
In general. 'Cause
Sure.
you've said, and I don't know if you're joking or if you're telling the truth on, like, you mean this? Like, you've said Hillary Clinton's a lesbian. Sandy Hook was a hoax. You've said they put litter boxes in kids' in classrooms because kids think they're cats. And you also said that's been fact-checked. I heard that from multiple sources. All of those things are lies. Where are you getting this information from? Like, what is your media diet?
Well, I think everybody can have a personal opinion. When it comes to...
You didn't say it was an opinion. You said, no, you implied it was a fact to your congregation.
Well, there is a lot of rumors about Hillary Clinton and Uma Abedin, which is...
who was her assistant for several years.
So, and to me, it seems likely. I can't say it's a fact, because I would be lying if I said it's a fact, because I don't know for sure, but I would say I believe it's very likely. When it comes to the Sandy Hook thing that you brought up, again, there's a lot of strange things with that specific incident that caused me to doubt the veracity of the official story. I can't tell you exactly what happened. I don't know what happened. I don't know if children died or not for sure, but it's very likely that some did. It's likely that, there's some strange stuff going on. When you see a parent laughing on camera and then pretending to be sad, that's a strange thing to see.
I don't want to relitigate all of Sandy Hook right now.
Well, you brought it up.
No, I know.
I just want to clarify.
I'm saying people grieve in different ways.
Yeah.
And there are people who hear the worst news of their life and like their first reaction might be laughter. And it seems weird. And it's just them processing stuff differently.
It is possible.
But my point is like, that's a very Alex Jones conspiracy theory sort of thing. I'm trying to figure out, okay, you don't know what happened, you're saying. Well, where are you going to learn stuff?
I think it's best to always use primary sources for anything that you learn or read about. Get the actual quotes, watch the original video, try to find the original sources, and of course, when it comes to anything with information, there can always be bias, slant, things taken out of context. So I don't say there's any one singular source of truth as far as like news. I don't trust any news. But I think that all news has bias. I think that all news has problems.
But we can't all find primary sources for everything. I can't.
Sure.
Like,
so
it's impossible to watch C-SPAN for 24 hours a day. I'm saying, where are you getting the filtered information from? Because it's got to be somewhere.
I use everything.
What's everything?
I would say I use mainstream media sources. I use online sources like Twitter or Gab or other like blog places, YouTube.
Okay, but any of those places, no one just watches YouTube, reads Twitter. It's you've already selected whose voices you want to listen to on those outlets.
I wish. The news feed is filled with people I've never even heard of in my life.
But
it's constantly being retweeted by all kinds of people.
But there's
independent journalists that are being retweeted by all kinds of people. And there's people like you that come on my feed.
Sure.
I don't follow you personally.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't choose to follow your news sources, but they might come up. There's going to be liberals that come up, AOC. Like, I don't care to follow AOC.
But this is the algorithm. You follow certain things, and it's going to feed you more of what you tend to like.
I think that they feed everybody what they want, personally. But
I haven't heard any specifics, though. Like, Twitter is not a news source. Twitter depends on who you follow and what they feed you.
Yeah.
Right. But, that's not a news source.
I don't think there's any singular person that I follow, though. So I would say I look at all of them and just kind of judge them independently.
And how about, is there any different?
Not naturalnews.com.
Do you have any specific sources you go to?
I mean, I would just say the same thing. Like, I just kind of just check out multiple different things.
But using the same, social media
stuff like that. But, yeah,
I mean, my concern about that is, and you're not alone. A lot of people do that. If you ask people right now, where do they get their news from? I'm sure most people are like TikTok, YouTube. But again, it's filtered. There's an algorithm. It feeds you what it thinks you want to see.
True.
And that means you're just going to get confirmation bias.
It can be an echo chamber for sure.
Right. But you probably get the same thing.
No, because on Twitter, I'm not doubting it. I follow certain people, but not because they agree with what I already believe. It's because I know they've done their homework. I know how they do their homework. Like, this is a frustrating thing when I see conservative people say, oh, yeah, I followed this right-wing news source. It's like, they don't do news. They do commentary. I do commentary. I know what that means. I'm not collecting the primary sources. I don't have an editor.
I mean, you do on us
stuff. Sure. You're right. And
I just did a story. I just did something about how the House passed HB 60 House Bill 6090, and I went right to the actual bill itself and read the bill, and then I read where they got their definitions from, which was, the
I don't know which bill you're talking about, but okay.
It's basically just an anti-Semitic bill where they get their definition from an outside source, and basically you have to go to this outside website, which is the Holocaust Memorial.
It's the International Holocaust Research Council.
Yeah. Okay, and basically if you say the Jews killed Jesus, then that is considered an anti-Semitic.
That is not anti-Semitic.
But that's what the definition is if you go to the website.
That's the Marjorie Taylor Greene conspiracy theory.
No.
She's the one that emphasized
Go read the bill and show me where you can see the
they're not going to arrest anybody who says the Jews
killed
Jesus.
Well, here's the thing. They didn't say that what the punishments were. Basically, the punishments were in relation to like certain, I think, Title VI funds that the government is issuing. Then they may be able to restrict those funds if found guilty of those specific anti-Semitic definitions.
And if I wanted to know, is that what they're planning to do? Is that what the letter of the law is? There are people who study this stuff repeatedly, who I trust that they know how to research it. I guess let me rephrase the question.
I'm just saying that I went to the primary source, the actual bill, and I looked at who voted for it, and Marjorie Taylor Greene actually voted for that. So it wasn't her.
The problem with some of those things is I could read a Supreme Court decision firsthand, but I'm not a lawyer. And so if I'm trying to figure out how to interpret that sort of document, I want to go to lawyers who I know study this stuff, have the proper context. So going back to the where do you get your news from? But it tells you right there in the
bill where to get the definition, and so you go to the website. And then they tell you the definition of anti-Semitism, and it gives all these different things.
Good for you for doing that. I'm saying most people are never going to do that.
The source documents, or if I'm watching a video about something that happened in government, I just watch. I mean, because it's all on video, what they say.
So let's go back to COVID
I
for
understand your point.
Yeah,
because here's the thing. I listen to both sides. I try to listen to what the Democrat or the left, if you can use that term, will say about a particular bill, and I'll listen to the right, and I'll kind of just see like what both sides are saying about a particular bill, because there is interpretation, right? There is how does this apply, what's the spirit, and so I think you always should evaluate both sides, the more extreme views, and try to figure out like what's actually true. But you do have to independently fact check people. I don't believe you can trust the verified fact checkers or the community notes or any of those kind of things. I think they're pretty biased as well. So, we all have to make decisions for ourselves, use our own discernment, and the best is to look at primary sources. I think listen to both sides, and then you have to make your own judgment.
So let's talk about vaccines then during COVID and stuff, because I think both of you have said people should not get vaccinated for various reasons. You've done sermons about it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if this is a fair question, but I think it is. How do you think, I'm not looking for a scientific answer, how do you think that vaccines work?
Well, the COVID vaccine's a little bit different than other methodologies because it's using mRNA technology. So they're trying to create in your body a spike protein that then will trigger a response in your body to identify that spike protein, think that it's COVID, and eliminate it. And then by the process...
And your body would see that, and if it ever came into the system, your body knows how to react to it.
Then if you actually got the real COVID, you already have those you already have those antibodies.
Okay.
And then
generally, yes.
If we talk about previous vaccines, though, they would actually give you a weakened form of a particular illness and hope that it would generally create the same response.
Sure.
So that's the logic behind it.
Okay. So why would you tell people not to get vaccinated?
Well, number one, I think that logic seems sound. Like if that was true, I don't know that I could say there's anything wrong with that. I doubt the veracity of those claims. I don't think that they've done
claims?
That's how that I don't think it triggers the proper immune response. I think people are experiencing autoimmune disorders and issues as a result of these mRNA vaccines. Additionally, there are other chemicals that are usually used in these injections and can cause problems for individuals. So to me, I don't personally believe the narrative. I don't think that it's working the way that they claim. I don't think it works. And then I think you're exposing yourself to potential health risks associated from it not working properly.
So going back then, like, where are you getting that from? Because if we say, who would know the veracity of if these things work? You could say, well, the scientific bodies that put it together, the experts who decide whether a vaccine should be divvied out to as many people as possible, they're the ones who have spent their lives studying this. I do not get it's not you guys personally, I do not get the animosity against someone like Anthony Fauci, who spent a career studying infectious diseases and knows more about them, and people in his office probably know more about them than any of us do, because we don't deal with them all the time. But if they're saying, no, we saw the methodology, we see what the scientists are doing, we looked at their process, we trust that this is sound, and that's the only reason we're recommending it. If that's what those experts are saying, and listen, I have a bio background. I am not qualified to make that call. But if that makes sense to me to say, these are people who studied this their entire lives, let's hear them out, as opposed to what someone who's like, well, I can poke a hole in this logic somewhere, or it happened, they made the vaccine really quickly.
Here's the thing, I can't poke a hole in their logic. What I'm saying is that I don't trust it. And if they did have double-blind studies, and we've gone through the test of time, and we actually see the results of everyone that got the vaccine didn't get the disease,
they did those studies,
and all the people that didn't get the vaccine are getting the disease, I don't believe that those have been done. Personally.
They were done.
Okay,
like,
I don't believe that.
Yeah, and the reason is so many people got infected with COVID that it was. If it was a very rare disease or something, and there was a vaccine to potentially stop it, it'd be really hard to try to. But I believe that
there's a motive financially for these things, and so vaccines are a big business. I was against vaccines way before COVID, so like I personally researched a lot of the vaccine information, and I find that it's not reliable information. It doesn't work the way they claim. I believe it's been it's correlated to autism increases in our society. And our government has literally paid money to individuals saying that this vaccine did cause autism in this child.
Congress
but this is what they said.
Paid money by those companies.
They said it wasn't the cause; it was just related. So whatever the difference is there semantically, but
you're saying you did the research, and my argument to you is that the people who study this for their entire careers
and get paid by the same people.
I don't know what that, like, they're not getting a bonus per vaccine or something. Like, their job is studying this. Your job is a pastor. Like, I know you guys get paid for being pastors. You know what
lobbying is, right?
Yeah.
Political
but I'm saying,
lobbying.
Like, they're not, like, saying, well, we'll make up science because someone paid us money to do it.
I don't think that they're making up science.
Pfizer invested $11 million and made $10 billion off the vaccine. There's the motivation right there.
Right. No, that's not motivation to put out crap.
And then they force
people. You don't think people do bad things for billions of dollars?
But you're missing my point, which is, we gave money to companies to say, if I have this correct, they were like, we don't know what the right vaccine's going to be. Like, we're going to give money to various companies to try to make their products. We're going to test them. We could do it quickly because a lot of people are getting COVID, so we could do these studies in a lot faster time than we would. We're putting all of our focus on this because it's such an emergency. What I'm trying to figure out is, okay, if the people whose job it is to do this are saying, we trust it, we're getting it, it's solid, the science stands behind it, I don't get, who are you to now come here and say, well, I did my own research and I don't think it works. So
I just think they're lying. I mean, I think the government lies about a lot of things. I think that they're financially, they have financial incentives to lie. I think a lot of them are being bribed. A lot of them are being threatened.
What
In
science
fact,
would
I'm going to see
otherwise?
A movie called Protocol 7 coming up by Dr. Andrew Wakefield, specifically on issues related to vaccines and a litigation that is currently still going on.
Andrew Wakefield's study connecting vaccines and autism was discredited by the journal he published it in.
Sure. I'm not going to dispute that fact, But at the same time, that doesn't mean that it's false. People will. There's a major financial incentive.
It's false
to.
They said it was.
There's a financial incentive
it's false because
to
the
cover
science
these
wasn't
things up.
done properly.
Well, maybe there's a technicality that's a little bit off, but I think there is a relation to the vaccines and a lot of this increase in SIDS, autism, and other autoimmune diseases.
You're saying, okay, Wakefield says this stuff. I go back to...
Well, I don't know what he said specifically.
But you're saying, like, this one scientist who has a different point of view, I'm taking very seriously, but the thousands and thousands of scientists who study this regularly for a living said something else, they're forgettable.
Yeah, but think about my worldview. How many people believe the same way I do about the Bible? I'm in a minority when it comes to being King James only, being a Baptist. I'm in minority on vaccines. That's okay. But I'm going to be a minority on things if I believe they're true. Just like, wouldn't you say you're in a minority group of being an atheist in America? But so are you just don't trust all of us pastors and just all of us Christian teachers? I mean, obviously you have your own level of skepticism and you've done your research and you believe the way you do for a certain reason, right?
Right. Those other Christians are obviously not all on the same page about everything.
And all doctors, they're not on the same page either.
On vaccines being effective? Yes, they are.
I know many doctors that are skeptical of vaccination. To say to say that they all agree is not true.
If they didn't agree, they lost their license because they didn't go along with the machine.
That's not how that works.
And here's ultimately the reason why we don't promote vaccines or don't believe that people should take them is that Jesus said, "He that is whole needeth not a physician." If you're not sick, don't put things inside your body to make you sick.
Do you take
and
Tylenol?
Well, if I'm sick.
Did you get the COVID-19 vaccine?
Yes.
Have you gotten the boosters?
Yeah.
How many?
I think I've had 4 altogether. Right.
Did you ever have any negative side effects? I'm just curious.
For like the day after I got the shots, fever spikes up a little bit, and it was intense. Like I couldn't do anything for like a day, and then I was fine.
If the government tells you to do something, will you do it?
No, I want to know who's saying it. Like, depends on what.
So, like, if Trump or his administration says stuff, would you find it more skeptical?
Fauci worked under Trump.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, in general.
He also said not to wear masks.
Yeah, but Fauci.
When?
At the beginning, and then he's like, "Oh, never mind." When his handlers
told him to change
his mind.
Let's be fair. Did Trump hire Fauci? He worked in the government way before Trump.
Your question is, do you listen to what the government says? It's like, if Trump says something, I'm not going to believe it. If the scientists...
What about Joe Biden?
No, about what?
About anything. Are you skeptical of what Joe Biden says?
If you think I'm a fan of Biden, I am not.
Okay, I just want to know. I'm just curious.
Like a lot of Democrats.
Do you think that like the left or Democrats are always right?
No. Dude, no one hates Democrats more than other Democrats.
Well, I mean, to me, it almost seems like the Republican platform is very similar to what Democrats used to be. I don't know if that's on social issues, maybe not necessarily like foreign policy or some of those things, but on certain social issues, it seems like the shift has come to where Republicans are very similar to what Democrats used to be in the 90s or early 2000s.
I fully agree with you.
Kind of like what I was talking to you about before the show about how my grandpa was like a John Kennedy type of, Democrat or whatever.
Since we're talking about politics, this is a real question I have, because I don't think I've heard you both say things like, I know you're not getting into politics in your churches, but neither of you are fans of Trump. I know you're not fans of Democrats in general, but you don't seem like fans of Trump or the Republican Party in general, even if there's some overlap there. I am genuinely wondering, I don't know how you guys vote, because it sounds to me from what I hear from your sermons like you have plenty of criticism of Trump as well, but I would guess if you had to pick between the two, that's where you're going to go. But I'm genuinely curious if I don't know the answer to this. Like, am I right to just assume, you're probably going to vote for Trump or whoever the Republican is on the ballot? Or do you ever say, like, no, the Republican's just as bad, so I'm going to say no, I'm not going to vote, or something like that?
I don't vote.
You don't vote?
No.
I didn't vote in the previous election.
Really?
I have voted in the past.
Me too.
And it was usually Republican, mostly out of just a lot of ignorance, just thinking like, well, if they're Republican, they're probably better than the Democrats, so I'm just going to vote Republican. Yeah. Today, I'm not against voting in a sense. I think if there was a really good candidate that I liked, then I probably would vote for them.
Is there any candidate you would like? I
Ron
find
Paul,
it very hard to believe.
Like Ron Paul seemed like a good candidate in times past, and so I think that he's a
so
reasonable.
very libertarian.
I mean, I'm not like libertarian in general. I think that he had some good policies. Okay. So like, I don't necessarily, I don't really care about the labels as much as I care about what they actually believe or stand for. So someone that wants to shrink the government in general would be a positive for me. That would be, something I would be interested in.
A couple other questions just to see if there's, I didn't get to all these, but we talk about like primary sources and stuff. I think you have said, I'm quoting you here, of the Holocaust, did they kill 6 million? I doubt it. Only if we were lucky.
Yeah, that's like one of your most popular articles about me or something.
It's a horrible thing to say, but I want to focus on the I doubt it. I want to focus on the I doubt it.
I will answer that, but can I first say that the context of that specific statement was about people that are antichrists, because I said that they're antichrist and Hitler was an antichrist, and I said if one antichrist kills another, then I'm not sad. So I'm not lumping women and children and people that are just innocently just happen to be of a Jewish descent as being killed, that would be lucky, okay? The context was about the idea of people that worship Satan through the practice of Judaism, and they're a literal antichrist because they deny Jesus as the Christ. If an antichrist killed another antichrist, I wouldn't be sad. I brought up that number just because it's just kind of in my mind like kind of a half joke, kind of like funny. But obviously
hilarious.
Obviously not everybody gets my humor.
But the I doubt it is the thing that I want to focus on, because it's like you're clearly saying it wasn't that many, whether that's a joke to you or not. But again, going back to where are you getting this information from? There are primary sources who could tell you, who are still living today, this is what happened at Auschwitz. I lived through it. This is the extent. You have historians who have studied that. Like, I don't know where you get off saying, I doubt the numbers, because who are you going to rely on to give you those numbers then? That's my concern here.
Yeah, I think it's unknowable. And like from my worldview, I would think probably millions of Jews did die in World War II. I think they probably rounded up gratuitously to the 6 million number because they like that number.
Round up from what?
I don't know. Like I said,
1.3 rounded up to 6.
That sounds reasonable. But again, I'm not going to sit here and say that I know, because I don't. I just make this joke with people. I say, if I believe 5,999,999 Jews were killed, does that make me a Holocaust denier? Because it seems like it does to people, and I just find that level of over the top bombastic attitude makes me suspicious a little bit of like, why can't I be curious about this, or why can't I ask questions, or why can't I just see the math on this and how you got there? And it seems like
you can.
No,
what
there are
sources.
There are sources that will appeal to a 6 million number, but if you look historically, there are other sources that didn't come to that number, and they kind of trickled up. And
going back to what sources are you talking? I'm not
going to point to anything right this minute because off the top of my head. I'm just saying, like, I think that there are potentially other sources and other pieces of information that put suspicion to that specific number. But again, I just think it's funny that like you can't even balk at the number. You can't even be suspicious of the number. Like, to me, that raises alarm bells in my head.
If you said it wasn't 6 million, it was 5.9 million, and I'm getting that from for this reason, that's one thing. If you're saying it's not 6 million, and then pretty much that's the end of the story, like, that's when people go to the Holocaust denial route, where you're just saying, I don't believe it. It wasn't that many. That's too many. Like, there's no way it was that many.
Yeah, but why does it matter? Because to me, if, like, let's say 3 million Jews were exterminated in World War II, does that really undermine the atrocity? To me, it doesn't really matter what the number is specifically. To me, the fact that I can't even question anything about it underlies the idea that there could be something fallacious about this particular
This is the same problem as the Sandy Hook thing, where it's like, if you don't trust the numbers that were given by people who studied this stuff, they didn't pull 6 million out of thin air. They didn't pull the number of Sandy Hook victims out of thin air. Like, they
like number 6, though.
What is that?
I do like the number 6 and 6 million.
Oh my God. They're not pulling it out of their ass, though. So, like, they're getting it from somewhere, and I don't get where you are like, I'm pretty sure those experts don't know what they're talking about.
But why does it matter?
Well,
Like, why would it matter to you?
Because
you can't even buy on the internet that
expertise.
have numbers in them.
You're undermining expertise. This goes back to the vaccine thing. This goes to the historian thing with the Holocaust, which is there are people who dedicate their lives to studying this stuff. And I think the message you are sending your congregations is, it doesn't matter. They don't know anything.
I don't really preach about the Holocaust very often. If I have mentioned it, I just say you do your study for yourself because I don't really think that necessarily. But I don't think that that's necessarily something that I should be preaching about as far as like doctrine, because it's not doctrine.
Okay.
But if they're interested in that, then that's up to them to study that. I recommend, that they just try to find a book if you can, but it's against the law in most countries to even question the Holocaust. That's pretty weird that
it happened.
If you doubt the numbers, you can go to prison for them. If you say it didn't happen, it's that you can think it, but if you say it out loud, you go to prison for that. Like, it's pretty weird that you have to make a law, to say that something happened. Like, what other
yeah, I mean, what if it was
That's not a law here,
What if
though.
it was 6.5 million?
trying to make it
like,
one,
why can't we just investigate it and see all the information?
Because the people who study it for their lives have studied it.
I think that there's a clear
is it against
ulterior
law?
motive there.
It's
and
not
so,
a law here, though. Like, Germany has a different
Yeah,
set.
of
I'm not
course,
defending
sure.
or not defending. I don't know it. But, like,
Do you believe in free speech?
Yeah.
Like, do you think that we should be silenced for our viewpoints?
You're not silenced.
But do you believe we should be?
No. You can say what you want.
But
I do think private
But are you
companies,
excited, like, when YouTube cancels us or deletes our channels or nukes us?
That's not free speech, first of all. The YouTube thing, I did have this, by the way, to talk about. But the YouTube thing, they're a private company. They have their rules in place. You guys have broken those rules, not just you two, other new IFB preachers as well. They've broken those rules on purpose, like sometimes flaunting it, then setting up sock puppet accounts to post other videos of your sermons as well. So the fact that YouTube says, okay, you can't be on here anymore, that's not suppressing your free speech. The fact that we're doing this live stream right now on a site that has no policies about hate speech or anything like that.
I think that they do. They're just not having arbitrary definitions.
There's a couple.
But I'm just saying, if you were in charge of YouTube, though,
Yeah.
would you agree with that? Like, would
With-
you want us to be off of the platform?
Yes.
Is kind of my question.
Yeah.
Well, then they're silencing free speech.
No, you have free speech. No one's arresting you for the things you are saying.
So the woman in Oregon that got her business taken away and fined $150,000, Sweet Cakes by Melissa, because she wouldn't, make some queers a wedding cake or whatever. Do you think that it was right to do that?
I need to remember which specific case that
So
was.
she
My
refused to make
understanding,
a wedding cake for
my
them.
understanding is if you are selling a cake and you're saying, I'm selling this cake, let's say it's $20 or whatever, you cannot, according to Oregon law, say, well, if someone comes in, for example, who's black and says, I want to buy that cake, and you say, I'm not going to sell it to you, well, that's obviously racial discrimination. And if a gay person comes in and says, I want to buy this wedding cake that you are selling, and I'm going to pay you for it and stuff, yeah, saying that, no, I'm not going to sell it to you specifically because I know what you're going to use it for, yeah, that's discrimination on sexual orientation. I believe that's the thing she did that they fined her for.
Can't somebody that sells guns think that someone's being suspicious and refuse to sell them the gun because they're worried what they're going to do with that?
I'm not dodging the question. I don't know what the law is regarding
if their
that.
religion, prohibits that practice or they don't believe that that's right, don't they have the right to refuse service? Just like YouTube has the right. You're saying YouTube has the right to refuse service
YouTube
to
is
the
a private
speech
company.
that they don't like.
If you're
But
selling
that lady was a
stuff-
private company, so like it's
YouTube's,
funny how that
YouTube's
doesn't
selling
work.
ads and they're selling views. So in a sense, like, why can't I have my viewpoint on YouTube?
You're not owed YouTube space.
But is that person owed a cake from this particular bakery?
If the company is selling the product and you go in and
YouTube's
you wanna
selling
buy
the
it,
product of ads. They sell ads on videos, and in fact, right now it's on all videos virtually. I don't think that unless you have a subscription, ads are being
Right.
put on every single video.
I don't get the idea that if a private company says you violated our rules. By the way, if you weren't violating their rules, you could be on their platform. Like that's
Yeah, well,
the issue.
they change the rules every single week, obviously.
And everyone
so,
on YouTube knows it. And believe me, everyone's frustrated because we never know what the lines are. But very clearly, if they're saying you can't say the following things and they put it out there and you violate
Yeah, they're just taking quotes from Pastor Mena's sermon and then putting them as their community guidelines specifically. That seems pretty targeted.
Much. Yeah.
It's a general rule that applies. But again, if they say you can't have the things because you're violating our guidelines, that is not free speech.
They didn't violate their guidelines. They made up new guidelines after the fact, and then they retroactively enforce them. Mm-hmm. So that's targeting. That's targeting specific speech.
Hate speech was still
and for viewpoints.
What is hate speech?
Oh my God, hate speech. You are specifically saying something awful because of someone's.
What's something that's awful?
Oh my God, I'm not a lawyer here. You're asking me something that's not my expertise. But I'm saying like if
but you can't even define hate speech, and then we think we should throw people off of a platform because of it.
No, the company can set the agenda for what their rules are. I'm not necessarily defending YouTube because I think they go too far in certain areas.
But do you think that YouTube's become a public utility? Because
it's not, though. I mean, we can argue. We can make the case the internet's public utility.
Well, they put all kinds of filth on YouTube, and that's allowed to be on there. But
and that's a fair.
But then
they
rebuttal. But ours is hate speech when they're just like blaspheming.
But Google's
Christians.
Pretty much the main search engine.
I know, but it's
and
not
YouTube
free speech.
and Google are hand in hand.
It's a monopoly,
and it's almost like saying
different conversation though.
Yeah, but what about a phone? What if I said something on a phone conversation and AT&T says you can't have cell phone service or
I
Sprint
believe it's
or
different
T-Mobile
because phones are public utilities.
Yeah, but
again,
why are they a public utility? Is because there's a handful of people that control all the power. It's not one company. It's a handful of companies, but they control the entire marketplace.
But we're confusing
Does not
two
YouTube
different things.
control the marketplace?
If we want to criticize YouTube, there's no shortage of things we could talk about because I have criticisms of YouTube as well. But it's not a free speech issue if they say these people have violated our guidelines, even though they are always changing, so they can't be on our platform. And by the way, they don't just say they don't go from 0 to you're banned. They have their strike policies.
I never got that. I never went through that policy.
You definitely went through their
policies. They gave me no strikes and would just delete my channel.
Yep.
Which one? The sock puppet accounts or the new ones?
The original ones. All of them. Virtually every single account that I had.
Pastor Menes and Pastor Mejia.
I never went through the official 3-strike policy.
No strikes.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do have a couple other things.
So can we ask a few questions too?
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Right.
You absolutely can. Have any of the pastors in the new IFB said stuff where you felt went too far?
And any issue, or just?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, of course, we don't agree with each other on things because we're independent. So, there's going to be times when we disagree on minor doctrines or certain statements. And of course, sometimes we wish that maybe we worded things differently. There's times where I listen to my own sermon and I wish that I had worded things differently or maybe expressed myself better. So I think that's inevitable. But generally speaking, I don't have a problem with any of my friends. And I think that they're doing a great job, generally speaking. But,
when Jimenez, for example, said what he said, what was his comment in reference to?
Was I sad that, 49,
that was
50 homos got, yeah.
So he made a comment about he was celebrating the Pulse massacre.
Well, he didn't celebrate it, but he said, am I sad? No, I'm not sad.
I mean, here's the thing. I literally put it in a documentary. So,
right.
It's going to be hard for you to say that I didn't agree with it.
No. So I know you agreed with that one, but I'm saying in general, if they say something like that, do you ever feel like those types of comments that your colleagues might say ever go too far?
It's possible. I don't know of one. If they went a little, let's say they're in a kind of a gray area, I'm just going to side with them because I think they're doing the Lord's work and I want to be supportive of them, generally speaking. If they genuinely crossed a real clear boundary line and it's inappropriate, then if personally asked, I'd probably just give the right answer. But I don't want to necessarily attack them. I wouldn't necessarily.
How do you criticize each other?
Well, sometimes we call each other and talk. Sometimes we criticize each other in a sense we preach differently, but maybe not call each other out to draw direct
if we
attention.
disagree, maybe on an interpretation of a passage or something, when we get to that passage, it's not like we go after each other on purpose or something, but if we get to that passage, then, we'll just preach it how we preach it, and we know maybe how other people interpret that passage, but usually it's just a minor thing. It's not some major doctrinal difference. It's maybe just an interpretation of a different passage.
That makes sense. Is divorce okay in your view?
I believe that people should never divorce.
So then my question is, if someone is in a bad marriage,
yes,
victim of abuse or emotional abuse, if not physical abuse, Like, under what grounds would it be okay for someone to leave a marriage?
Well, like I said, I don't ever believe in divorce, so it wouldn't matter what scenario you dream up. But at the same time, if someone were genuinely like afraid of their physical safety, or there was some kind of a severe issue, like there may be a reason to separate temporarily, just to try and get away from that particular issue. Like if someone says like, hey, I'm worried that my husband is going to literally kill me or kill my children or hurt them, and so we went to my mom's house just to like, be away from them. Like, I'm not going to condemn that person for trying to potentially like stay away from abusive behavior.
But then go back?
Well, again, I do believe that wives should be subject to their husbands. So, here's the thing. I totally condemn spousal abuse. I think it's wicked.
I wasn't suggesting
husbands
you
should
don't.
never do it. But here's the thing. I would encourage that wife to stay with her husband. Yes.
Let's take it down a notch. What if they just don't love each other? Is it ever okay for those two people to separate, or are they doomed? Like, well, I made a mistake when I was 19, got married to someone I thought I loved. Guess what? I was wrong. Is that okay? Because I think you said this recently, like, men have it rough because women can just divorce you for any reason, no fault divorce. It would be horrible if two people who loved each other got divorced. That's not what's happening. There are reasons. I don't have to know everyone's reasons. But if people get divorced, there's probably a reason behind it. And the fact that it's legal for people to get divorced without citing abuse or something like that, I see that as a step forward. Let people live their lives, do what makes them happy, because it's probably
yeah, but I
better
don't
for
believe
kids.
that divorce makes people happy. I think that it's a misnomer and a lie. Additionally, like it causes destruction for many people. There's a lot of victims of divorce, in my opinion. But I've known people that had a really bad marriage, and they even said audibly, like, I don't love you anymore. Yeah. And I think they were being sincere. It wasn't just like having a random fight or something.
Right.
This was like a year period of time. And then I know now they've restored their marriage and they're back together. Fine. So just because people may be having a bad spot in their marriage and think that divorce is the right door to take, if that door was out of the equation, like it's not even an option, I think it would cause many more people to work on their marriage and resolve their issues and fix them, because marriage is two sinners. People are imperfect. Love is a thing that you have to work at. And so, if people have that mentality, I think people would be more careful who they choose to marry. They would treat it more carefully, and that marriages would generally be better overall because they wouldn't have this escape door.
And I think it's probably more people are prolonging when they get married these days, right? Like they're
afraid of divorce.
I don't even know it's that, but I'm going to figure out what I want first, then get married, as opposed to marrying young when I'm still not settled in my own life and I don't necessarily know what I want. But I'm saying, like, if they're going into marriage later in life because they have a better sense of what they're looking for, that probably leads to a stronger marriage. But going back to your point of, if they are getting divorced, they've probably decided there is no path forward to make this work. I see that, then that's a good reason to separate. And it's probably, if you know people whose parents have gotten divorced, like, I've known plenty of people who said, yeah, my parents constantly at each other's throats. They did not love each other. And after they got divorced, everything was better for us as kids. Because guess what? Having those two people in the household was not better for us. It made our life hell. And so going back to my question of, like, is divorce okay? I think there are plenty of cases when it is. I don't think you guys believe that it's ever okay. And I'm trying to figure out, like, there are some cases when things are really bad. You're living in a bad home.
But if divorce wasn't on the table, I think those people could have still reconciled and the family life could have been better.
But as well as I do, that doesn't always happen.
Sure. And I'm not saying that it does. But at the end of the day, divorce is devastating to both parties. It hurts both parties. It hurts children if there are children in the situation.
It can.
I think it does, just period. Now, whether or not it dramatically affects them is, not always going to be the case. People can be strong. People can get over things. And obviously, if children are older, it's maybe less likely that it'll have a major impact. But at the same time, I think it's damaging to society. It's damaging to the institution of marriage. And I think that people should not be waiting to get married, because they're usually committing a lot of sin in that waiting period. and they're bringing all this baggage into the relationships they have. And I think it's probably going to cause them to be more likely to even get divorced.
That sounds like you're saying jump into it before you know what you're jumping into.
No, I think you should totally know the person and have confidence in who they are and have sincere feelings of love towards that individual.
When you're young and you
I got married at 21.
Which is young.
And we're about to celebrate 15 years here in just a few days.
Yeah.
And we're great. We have a great marriage.
And that's wonderful. That's not the case for everybody.
Sure, but I think the reason why people struggle in their marriage is because they're not putting God first. They're not being selfless in their relationship. They're being very selfish. And I think, unfortunately, selfish people think getting divorced will fix it, when many times it's not the case. We see the divorce rate increase, actually. If someone gets divorced, they're actually more likely to get divorced again when they get married. They have a higher chance of getting divorced. So if divorce was a positive decision, I would think we would see the inverse. I think we would see people getting divorced, and then the next time around, they're like, oh, now I know what I want. Now I have a better sense of who I should be married to and what I gel with. But we actually see an opposite effect of individuals who get divorced, statistically, generally speaking, have that happen. And
I don't know why that's worse than like a couple that doesn't love each other or fights constantly who stay married for 50 years or something. I don't get why longevity is like the pinnacle of success there, as opposed to, all right, you got divorced 3 times, but
they're probably going to argue with anybody. People argue. Marriage is ugly. Marriage has low spots. It has high spots. And marriage is, an institution where you choose to love someone regardless of their faults. That's what true love is. And so the picture of marriage is saying, I will unconditionally love you till death do us part. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to see someone that will be willing to love you even with all your faults, even no matter what sins or what problems you have. That's a beautiful thing. And it's being destroyed by this ejection seat called divorce today, where someone says, I don't think you're treating me well enough, or I don't like you enough. And it shows they don't genuinely have love in their heart towards that individual. Hosea in the Bible was commanded to stay married to an adulterous woman, which for most men, that's probably the worst thing that the wife could do. And I personally think that as well. But Hosea stayed with her and was a faithful husband and loved her. And so that's a beautiful picture of how Christ loves us, even though we are very sinful and transgress against him continually, that he loves us and you could never lose your salvation.
That sounds very nice. My concern is if someone in your church or your kids or something like that came to you and said, this is a bad marriage, for whatever the reason is, the option is, yeah, but leaving that bad marriage is not an option in your view for those people. And that to me contributes to down the road. Maybe
I think most kids,
abuse.
if not all kids, want their parents to stay together. And most people that I know that their parents did get divorced, they've told me that they wish their parents had stayed together. I'm not saying there couldn't be an exception to that. I'm not saying...
I could tell you the exact opposite.
Sure. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. But most of the time, from my experience, it's that kids wish their parents were together. I've seen the devastation of a lot of children and their attitudes changing, having behavioral issues after their parents get divorced. My mother was a child psychologist and therapist, and she dealt with a lot of children that had, unfortunately, very rough home lives, and divorce was often in that scenario. So I think it's very, if we could get all the statistics and all the proper data, I think we would show that even carnally speaking, there's a negative impact. But even if that wasn't true, the Bible's clear. Jesus said, what God has joined together, let not man put asunder. And that's what I believe. So I think that there's carnal reasons, but ultimately I appeal to Scripture, and I think that Jesus wants marriage to be till death do us part.
He says he hateth the putting away.
Yeah.
He hates it.
And I'm saying that leads to bad results. I'm sure he wants it.
Well, no,
I'm sure you want it.
The quote that you were talking about is where I'm upset about no-fault divorces.
Yeah.
Here's what happens. The women or whoever can just say, I want to divorce you because you're ugly, or I don't like you, your breast stinks, or whatever.
Yeah.
No fault. But what happens is the woman always gets custody or split custody, but in general, the woman gets the custody or alimony or child support in most cases. 92, it's a huge percentage of the wife, the former wife, getting custody. And so then the husband's screwed. He's got child support he has to pay for the rest until they're all 18 years old or even into college if they go to college. And then it just destroys them. It destroys their lives.
Okay, I don't know the stats off the top of my head. If there was more parity in the child support alimony stuff, like, so it wasn't screwing over one side, but you would still be against it, though. Like,
well, because Jesus is against it, and so we have to appeal to Scripture.
But you've heard. I respect
in a perfect
the fact
world. Yeah, I mean,
the Southern Baptists right now going through a huge thing because there's so many pastors who have said over and over, no, stay with your abusive husband. It'll get better. He's coming to church now. Like, and they just end up staying in these bad marriages when it's like,
if there's violence or sexual abuse, I think that they should leave and not get divorced. But that's
I don't know why that's better.
Believe. Well, I mean, what's divorcing going to help? I mean, divorcing is not going to help the situation, is it?
It 100% will help.
How?
What's the alternative? Separating but not divorcing?
You just separate and not divorce.
I mean,
that's what the Bible teaches in 1 Corinthians chapter 7.
I've heard advice, and I agree with this, that pastors would say, try to work on treating your husband better. And there's been cases where the women did try to be a better wife despite the horrible circumstances they're under, and it did change their marriage, and it did get better. So I would encourage them to continue doing so until death do us part. I mean,
there was some Southern Baptists.
You make vows.
I don't think that men out there are just beating up a Proverbs 31 woman. I mean, according to the Bible, the Proverbs 31 woman is just like going out of her way to make all the meals, be so polite, never nagging, just like always at the house, just taking care of everything. Like, I just don't think that's happening. So I think that women could prevent themselves from a lot of physical abuse in that scenario.
No. There are plenty of women who are like, I've done everything. That's not why abuse happens, because she's obedient. Like, and that's the wrong way to think about it.
Disobedient, you mean?
Because she's disobedient. So that's not why it happens. But again, what would it take to change your mind on that? Like, do you need to hear from a woman who has been beaten up even though she was a submissive, obedient
sometimes
wife?
we talk about these things in a vacuum. Obviously, if a man was being abusive to his family, like, there should probably be some crime or punishment for that individual, and that person should be held accountable for their actions, right? Like, we can't
if he's not doing something illegal per se.
Yeah.
That's how it happens most of the time. Like, they're not physically abusing him to the point that you've committed a crime or anything. But let's just stick with, like, emotionally abusive. I don't love you. We're not happy together. To me, that's like, okay, well, go be happy. Your kids are better off when you're both happy. So go separate.
Well, hey, Abigail in the Bible had a bad marriage, and you know what? She literally prayed that her husband would die, and she, like, cursed him. And God killed him.
How does it always come back to death with you people?
Well, but we're talking about such an extreme scenario.
He was a reprobate,
so
though.
Death is usually
Everyone's
in
a
the context.
reprobate.
No, but he actually was.
No, not everybody's.
He actually was, though.
If you have questions, feel free.
Yeah, I want to ask a few questions too. First of all, I wanted to ask, do you watch the sermons, or do you have other people watch them for you?
I wish I had a staff of people. I do not. It's me.
It's always you.
How many sermons do you think you've watched?
Too many. I don't have a number for you.
Okay. Now, you watch a lot of people because I've seen clips. You have Greg Locke, John MacArthur.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen other charismatic preachers, a lot of new IFB preachers. Who's your favorite preacher?
Define favorites.
Well, I'll wait in two. The one you listen to the most, and then the one you want to listen to the most.
I don't want to listen to any of you.
Is it like a moth to flame, or what's the deal?
Sometimes. Depends on the subject. If something bad happened, Pulse nightclub massacre, something like that happens, then I'm definitely curious because I figure you're going to say something about it. If the sermon is about some Bible chapter that is pretty random, I probably don't care. With someone like Greg Locke, who I don't think you guys are fans of either.
No.
He has a lot of people who watch his stuff because he talks about politics all the time. I don't feel the need to watch a lot of his stuff because other people will flag if anything comes up. I don't think so that's it. I kind of have a sense of, I know there are certain people who watch these people. And so
you have no favorite?
Favorite's the wrong word.
What about least favorite? Does that apply?
All of you are my least favorite equally.
Equally. Like,
you are like my bad children.
Like, what about Catholic priests? Do you think that they're better than us?
They're boring. In general, they're boring.
Okay.
It's just very traditional.
Because you don't really listen to I guess, a lot of other denominations from my viewpoint. You kind of have charismatics, maybe.
You know what it is?
And then us.
Catholics are well known. I know how they preach. Most people who have been involved in the Catholic Church know what to expect from them, so there's no surprises coming from them. That's why really the only time if the Catholic Church makes any news, it's if the Pope did an interview on 60 Minutes or some bishop said something egregious or there's a sex abuse scandal or a lawsuit, something like that. Those are newsworthy. Most of the stuff they do is not generally that interesting or newsworthy, right? I don't think people are paying attention to what the new IFB does as much. I believe, as you probably know, it is growing to some degree. And the thing, I think it serves a couple purposes to point out the things you guys say, because I genuinely believe you are following the Bible and saying, hey, look, these people follow the Bible, and this is what ensues from that, and these are the things they say. I think it's interesting to point that out. And it doesn't mean you represent the vast majority of Christianity. You don't. But it's like you're almost making my point for me, which is that if you're blind...
But is your problem really with our version of Christianity, or is your problem with the fact that the Bible says these things and we're really doing those things? Like, is your problem really with the Bible, or is it with us, how we approach the Bible?
It's your focus on certain scriptures as opposed to the rest of the... I don't remember hearing you guys give a big sermon on the Sermon on the Mount. Like, you don't spend a ton of time talking about Jesus says help the poor, let's do that. Because that doesn't come up very often, not nearly as much as the anti-gay stuff does, or things like that.
When it comes to your upbringing, I'm curious, were you raised a Calvinist?
No.
Were you raised Christian?
No.
Were you raised...
Jain. It's a smaller Indian religion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it a form of Hinduism?
There's a little bit of overlap. It's relatively minor in terms of numbers. But they believe in heaven and hell and karma and reincarnation and some things like that.
So I preached a sermon, and a lot of it had to do with you. You know the sermon I'm bringing up, kind of, right?
There's been a couple.
Well, there was one. It was like I mentioned like Hamet as a fool or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Okay. You made a comment where you said it's like my parents are writing this guy's sermon or something.
Oh.
What was that? What did that mean?
Oh, I mean, if you're Asian parents are super critical of their kids. Always.
So just like me calling you a fool is similar to how your parents would call you a fool or something?
Oh, yeah.
But it didn't have anything to do with Christianity.
No.
It was more just like mocking you as being dumb or something?
Yeah.
So do you feel like your parents made fun of you a lot?
Critical. It's not making fun. It's like it's never good enough. You know what I mean?
Like, do they look at you as like a success?
No. They don't know what I do.
Okay. They're just confused about being a political commentator or
they don't
like
know
a
what
news commentator or whatever?
I genuinely think if you ask them, what does Hammond do for a living? They don't know the answer.
He watches New IFB sermons.
I know. I don't think they could tell you I write about stuff, what I write about, what I talk about. I'm sure they have a general sense that I do something to do with religion, which isn't what they intended for me to be doing. So that's it. We don't really talk about it. We don't have arguments about it. It's just, whatever, you do your thing. I don't think they know what I do, but I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, I understand.
That's where you're calling me a fool? Yeah, well,
Sure.
Guess what? I hear that all the
Right.
time.
So what does, in your opinion, the Bible say someone has to do to be saved?
Accept Jesus.
And what does that mean?
Believe in his divinity. I mean,
Do you think salvation, according to the Bible, is by works or by faith?
It depends on your interpretation. I think it's by faith. Yeah, it's not by works. I think that is how most evangelicals and Christians, Southern Baptists, Protestants, that's how they see it. And again, there's a lot of difference on the specific theologies and stuff.
Sure.
So the question of what is it that binds all of you together, I mean, the list has to be short because everyone has different opinions on that. But yeah, that's the fundamental thing. It's like, you accept the divinity of Jesus, salvation through him alone, stuff like that.
Do you have a favorite sermon?
No.
Okay. You label us hate preachers pretty often. What makes me a hate preacher?
It's not that you say homosexuality is a sin, because that's almost standard for
probably everyone almost.
Yeah, that's pretty much most Christian
other than like United Methodist or something.
Yeah. pretty much.
Presbyterians.
Some. Only some.
It's that next step to say, because they're gay, they deserve the death penalty. Because they act on it, they deserve the death penalty, that the government should execute them. That crosses the line into, no, you don't. You're not just saying it's a sin, and just like gluttony is a sin, just like these other things are a sin, because that is what some preachers will say, right? Yeah, it's a sin, but we believe all these things are sins, and they're all equally sinful. It's that special focus on certain sins above other ones that I think you give to it, and the way you think it ought to be dispensed when it comes to the punishments. That to me is, that's what.
So if I believe in the death penalty for murderers and adulterers, but I didn't believe it for homosexuals, would I still be a hate preacher?
For people who took someone else's life, and sorry, you said murderers and who
for
else?
Murderers and adulterers. Let's say I believe in the death penalty for murderers and adulterers,
thing.
but I didn't believe it for homosexuals. Would I still be a hate preacher?
If you said people who commit adultery should be executed, yeah, I think when you say people should be executed.
Haven't I said that? Haven't I said that?
What?
That adultery should be punished with the death penalty?
Not with the same oomph, not with the same passion.
Probably not as many sermons that are talking about it, but I've said it, right?
I believe you've said it. Yeah.
So does that... Here's a question. Is hate ever okay?
It depends how you want to define it. Against who? For what? Again...
Do you hate anybody?
I hate plenty of people.
Okay.
It's the thing where you're
Would that make you a hate podcaster?
No, because I don't spend my day saying, if all I did every day is
like posted about people that you don't like.
Why don't I like
do you
them?
Post like how many positive posts do you have on your Twitter, or are they all negative?
They're all negative.
Okay,
no,
so does that make you a hate podcaster?
No, I'm telling you, no. Here's why. I'm saying,
I'm just trying to play your logic.
You're not saying this gay person is bad because they did this bad thing. You jump.
I did. It's because they were gay.
You're jumping to the assumption that this person is gay. That makes them more likely to be a pedophile. That sort of leap. You don't know that person. That person didn't do anything wrong, but you're assuming the worst possible outcome.
Even if they didn't, I still want them to be put to death, though.
I know. And that's, to me, that's that line. I don't cross that line. I don't like a lot of people. I would never say, let's execute them.
So you might hate people or hate me or
people.
hate...
I don't think about people that much.
Do you think the death penalty should be applied to anyone for any reason?
No.
So, like, if we found a serial killer that killed 30 people...
Put him in jail for life. If that person is guilty,
you think that's better than executing them?
Yes.
Why?
I don't think the death penalty is correctly applied. I think there's a lot of people who can and have slipped through the cracks because someone wanted a guilty verdict for...
You're just saying, like, because of innocent people, you don't want it.
But if it was perfectly implemented, would you agree
Yeah,
with
but that's not the world we live in.
Yeah, but wait a minute. If it's someone innocent, why would rotting in prison be better than being executed? Because in the same cases, they're wrongfully
justice did not work in that case. You're right. Like, that's why the opportunity for the appeals process and all that stuff. But there are people who, as far as we know, did not do the crime they were found guilty of. Like, I can show you those cases and the proof behind it. I find the death penalty to be immoral in general. But for the people who there's no doubt about their guilt. They did it. They confess to whatever.
I just think your punishment's worse personally, but let me ask this. If Jesus Christ came down from heaven and showed himself to you.
If there was proof.
Like him saying he's in person, he's talking to you, and he shows himself to you, would you choose to believe in him and believe the Bible?
Yeah. I mean, you're going back to if there was actual proof in front of your face, would you believe it? I think pretty much every atheist I've ever met has said, yeah, okay.
I feel like I've met people or heard people say, even if he did, I still wouldn't want to believe in him because they just kind of hate the Bible, and they say that like
it's
openly.
Not the hate of the Bible, like that's not. It's never.
Do you feel like you hate the Bible?
No, I don't think about the Bible. It's like, it's a book.
You disagree with it, obviously, but I'm just saying you don't necessarily hate the Bible.
I don't think about the Bible, right?
But so you do commentary on it, though.
I do commentary. It's a job at this point. Like, I talk about it. I write about it. But you know this, if you followed anything I do, I really don't spend time debating this stuff. I don't spend time talking about this verse is wrong or anything like that. My interest is...
You just make videos proving every single verse wrong.
That was almost a joke. I mean, the videos I made that you're talking about, it started as kind of I think I can point out the contradictions in Genesis 1 and 2, and that might be amusing to some people, and then it just kept going. But by and large, most of the stuff I do that I write about, that I actually spend a lot of time on, it's what are people doing with their beliefs? And like, if someone said, I'm inspired by Jesus to help the poor, that's great. I don't spend a lot of time on it. Do I think they're wrong about the belief stuff? I do, but I don't really care enough to write about that. That's not that interesting to me. On the other hand, if you guys say you believe in the Bible and that's leading you to say the things you have said that I have shared with people, that to me is like, okay, well, that's a problem in my view. Let's share that. Let's talk. I want Christians to have to defend you guys. I wish I'm almost mad that I'm the guy that pays attention to what you all say and other Christians are not. I want more. And it's not just you. If John MacArthur that you brought up or Greg Locke says something, I wish more Christians would call it out because stuff they say is harmful. Not just I disagree with it and it's wrong. It's like, no, you were saying something that is harmful. Where are Christians on that? I've said that many times. Like, why is it that there are right-wing watchdog groups, Right-Wing Watch being one of them, or Media Matters or whatever, that are following what people on the right say about things? Why aren't they policed by their own people in any way? If someone in your congregations disagreed or had a problem with things you said, I can't count on any of them to call you out on it. Well, you know what I mean?
They do.
Maybe they do privately, but they're not going to do it in a way that anyone else will hear about. And that to me is like, okay, well then.
Well, have you seen our trolls? I mean,
but no one's listening.
We preach a lot of sermons, and admittedly, like I think that most of them are pretty boring to the general populace. And it seems like you're focused on identifying homosexuality as a regular course of action of like pointing out these clips. So like, why are you gay?
Say that again.
Why are you gay?
Based on what? Because I focus on...
Like, you just... Like, why would a straight guy care so much about homosexuals?
Why do you think I care so much?
Because you're gay.
No. I'm married. I have kids.
To a girl?
Yes.
Was she born a girl?
She was.
Okay. No, so she still identify as a girl.
This is where I don't think you guys have empathy.
What do you mean
This is what
empathy?
I take away from your sermons.
But wait a minute. How can I have no empathy? I am interested in this. There's no way you think that we're that dangerous, because I don't think you would ever be willing to come into this room and have a conversation with us, which is an arguably hostile environment to you. And if we were really dangerous or something like that.
I don't think you're dangerous. I think if I were gay, I don't think you would be dangerous to me in the flesh like this either. My concern is less about you guys and the other preachers. My concern is as you grow, as the new IFB grows, and as more people are drawn to this, and again, one thing you do very well is that you know how to use online stuff. Like, that is how your church has grown. It's through, like...
Some of it, for sure.
A lot of it. Like, has grown through online, Rumble, YouTube, whatever it is. Steven Anderson knows that. Like, that's how he's grown, too. As that stuff grows, and I've seen what happens when people fall down those rabbit holes online and they fall into these areas where, again, I'm not criticizing like the fact that you're white or something, but when men, especially white men, speak with confidence about anything, there are people who are drawn to that and take it as gospel. And like,
but I just think people are drawn to the truth. You're drawn to the truth because you listen to our preaching.
Of course.
No, I mean, but that's my point. I want to ask this question, though.
They are drawn to you. I can't control what those people do. And my fear is when they hear what you are saying, not the boring stuff, because I'm guessing a lot of them aren't listening to the boring stuff. But they are listening when you were talking. And you know this, too, because you get excited when you talk about this stuff. When you were preaching about
I got really excited about Zechariah chapter 4 last night. And
when you preach about gay people,
on Wednesday at least.
You know that gets attention and people see it. And the comments on the live
Honestly,
chats.
I wish I didn't have to preach about it. And here's the thing. If the laws were the way they were, the way that I wish they were or they were in the past, I don't think we would be preaching about it very much. But can't you admit at least in the culture that's a major issue that are being brought up? I mean, there's a whole month celebrating LGBTQ in June.
October too.
I mean, it's not like this is a minor thing. It's obviously a big culture issue. A lot of people are directly impacted by it.
Is Black History Month okay?
I mean, but again, like I'm not. Black History Month is not something that I have to worry about because I don't go to work.
Yeah, and you don't have
they
to do
worry
anything
about
for
that.
Pride Month either.
They don't care. Yeah, but I have people protesting my church, literally. because of it. I have people damaging my property because of it, literally.
And guess what? Don't damage your property. I'm fully on board.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it's hard to say that
the protests you can ignore.
Yeah, but you
right
have women and children coming into your building, and you have people screaming at them, threatening them, and all this stuff. It's hard to say that I'm not going to touch on those issues or preach about it, because it's going to be a little bit more prevalent when you're dealing with it literally.
Why do you think they're protesting your church and not the Southern Baptist Church down the street?
Because they didn't preach the things that I preached, of course.
Right. But they do believe the same stuff about homosexuality being a sin.
Well, that's true. But they don't believe in the death penalty for them.
Right.
And those comments are what caused a lot of controversy, caused us to get public attention and draw a lot of people out. But I think that it's also because they're reprobates, and they still are attracted to the truth. And I'm just kind of curious, like, do you think that you're a reprobate?
About what?
Like, according to the Bible, Romans chapter 1.
I'm sure I am according to the Bible, but who
Why?
cares? I'm sure if you want to list whatever sins that you say the Bible says are sins, yeah.
But do you think it's possible for you to believe in Jesus Christ?
Yeah, show me the proof. Right, like this is the game we can play.
Well, here's the thing. The Bible said it was by faith, right? You even admitted that. So that's not physical evidence.
Yeah, I mean.
So do you think it's possible for you to believe in Jesus by faith?
It's possible.
It's possible. Okay.
It's probably not going to happen at this point.
Well, I mean, as much preaching as you've heard, it would definitely surprise me, to say the least. But of course, that would be great. I would want anybody to be saved, even someone like you, because I don't personally hate you. I actually like the clips that you make because you always pull out, like, honestly, you pull out the best parts of all my friends' sermons, so I don't have to wade through all of the other stuff that I didn't want to listen to. I can just hear the cool cut out, and you usually get really good sound bites, and you put them together. So honestly, I enjoy the clips. I've even retweeted several of your clips because I thought they were good.
The flip side of that, though, is there anything that would change your mind about being Christian at this point?
No, but I mean, that's the same as, like, many things. Like, I would never believe Santa Claus is real. I would never believe 2 + 2 is 5. I would never deny who my parents are. I mean, I look exactly like my dad. Like, you could never convince me my dad's not my dad. And the Bible teaches that when you get saved, it's like your eyes are opened. So here's the thing. After my eyes have been opened, I could never be convinced that I never saw before.
Yeah, but if I told you, there's no chance I'm going to become a Christian ever. I'm never going to I'm never going to find God at this point. Like, if I said that, you would say, oh, you're closed-minded. It could happen, whatever. Why is that not the same the other way around?
Well, I could say I'm fine with saying I'm closed-minded because I've already found the truth. Like, once I've found the truth, like I said, I'm closed-minded to Santa Claus being real. I'm never going to believe the earth is flat. I'm never going to believe.
I heard.
I'm never going to believe certain things. So that doesn't make me a closed-minded person just because I have certain dogmas in my life. I'm sure you have certain dogmas in your life, and there's certain things that you already know are true or you hold to dearly that you would never change your mind on. And that doesn't mean that we can't still have other conversations and be open-minded in certain dialogues.
Most atheists that I have talked to, worked with in the past, every single one of them would say what I'm saying to you, which is, yeah, fine, show me the proof, or show me, it's possible. I think Dawkins, who I'm not a fan of, but Richard Dawkins said in his book too.
He's not a fan of you.
He is very much not. But even he said,
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
What's the
beef.
deal?
We have a beef. Long story.
Okay.
He even said, like, if you want to say, like you are saying, I'm fully convinced God exists, and let's put you on one end of a spectrum. And if I'm saying I don't believe in God and I know
opposite
God doesn't
side,
exist.
Sure.
He's like, I'm not there. I'm a little before that. Like, I'm pretty convinced, but, like, I'm sure there's something that could open my mind to it. Most atheists I know would be in that same position. Not to change the subject, I did have one question I did want to ask. This is more for Pastor Thompson.
That's fine.
Which is that you said teachers who teach sodomy should be shot in the back of the head. That is a quote. My question is, what do you think they are teaching in school?
Well, if they're teaching sodomy in school,
what does that mean?
They're teaching that you might be a boy or you might be a woman trapped in a man's body and all this other stuff. Look, they're hanging pride flags in their classrooms.
What does that? Wait. Go one at a time here for a second. When are teachers teaching kids? You could be
wherever the laws are
in
place that they've changed the laws where you can teach it.
And what does the pride flag? Let's say there is a pride flag in the classroom or something.
They're saying I'm a queer. That's what they're saying.
They're not
and
saying
you could
that.
be one too.
No, they're not saying that.
They're actively promoting sodomy in schools, whether it's the law or not. It's a fact. The furry thing is real.
It's not. Do you know why they have a kitty litter box in that one classroom that you mentioned, which you said you looked up sources? Do you know why they have a kitty litter box in the classroom? Because in the act of a school shooting, if kids are locked down in their classroom for an extended period of time and someone has to go to the bathroom, that's why they have a kitty litter box in there. It's not
irregardless of that.
No,
there
that's the whole point.
There are furries that are at school, and they're kids that are pretending to be dogs and cats, and they're allowed to do this.
I assure you, they're not doing that.
Okay.
But again, this is going back to I have taught in a public school.
Isn't there some schools, though?
You attended them a long time ago. They weren't allowed to do that back then.
But I also taught in them relatively recently, and I work with kids in a public school now. And I'm trying to figure out, like, even in a sex ed class or something, they're not teaching that. What class do you think
but wait a minute.
Because
here's the thing. I understand there could be an ally. Like, someone could put up the flag, and they're not necessarily teaching it or promoting it. But they're just saying we want to be tolerant, or we want to help kids feel safe or something. And that's why they do it.
Yes.
But isn't there some school districts where they have demonstrated certain books that literally have what seems like pornographic type material or children committing sodomite type acts, albeit maybe it's characters drawn. It's not necessarily physical photos or something. I mean, is that teaching sodomy? If you literally have sodomite acts in books and they're handing them out to children, is that not teaching them sodomy?
This is where context matters. And I think it's a fair point. If you want to have a conversation, like what I would want to have is you tell me the book, you tell me what passage you have, because there are classic books that might have a sex scene in it. And in that case, let's discuss, like, what is it that we have a problem with? Is it the description? Because I don't think it should be taught to kids if it's just a sex scene for the sake of that. I'm making this up, but like if it's Romeo and Juliet, or if it's a young adult novel where some kid masturbates or something and whatever. I don't know what the scene would be, and I don't know what the purpose of that would be. But the question is, what is the point of why we're trying to teach a particular book?
Heather Has Two Mommies, is that one?
Heather Has Two Mommies, but that's not taught in school. That's not taught in school. But if it's in a library and a kid reads
they have
that
drag
book,
queens coming into schools and reading them books like that. Is that not true?
in public schools?
Yes.
Very few have, virtually none, have drag queens coming in. That's probably
Where's
something
your
you would
news
see
source,
at a
man? I mean, it's
if you want to see
doing
it
it
at a
public
public
libraries
at
too.
a public library is different from like a school bringing someone in to do
but
that.
schools are doing it.
But the point is, like, okay, so a drag queen comes in. They're not doing a strip show. They're not reading a book saying anything. It's someone coming in very colorful, wearing stuff like
well,
that.
Here's the thing. I don't care what excuse somebody wants to give about their behavior. They're obviously a homosexual and they should be put to death.
Who are we talking about?
A drag queen? If a drag queen's coming into schools
queens are not
teaching,
necessarily.
well, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
That's my whole
What purpose
point.
would that sexual dance have to do with children?
Who's doing a sexual dance? Where
Drag
are you
queens are
finding these
dressed
people?
like a stripper, but they're a dude.
No, they're not. Not
dressed like a
all
girl.
drag queens are doing that. There are drag shows that are adult themed. I will grant you that. The ones who are doing readings at public libraries sometimes in some places.
The ones with dragons on their heads that look like the serpent
but they are not
from
doing
Revelation.
a strip show for kids, and they're not reading sex scenes to kids. That is.
Well, I wouldn't
that's
put
not
anybody
happening.
to death. I wouldn't
be a Palestinian.
What are you talking about?
I wouldn't put anybody to death for that, but I would put them to death again for being a sodomite. And if they commit a sodomite act, which I'm sure that individual's guilty of. I'm sure if a man's dressed up like a literal drag queen, he's for sure committed sodomy.
You're literally skipping the whole let's go through the court of justice.
No. I'm not skipping anything. I'm saying I wouldn't bring up in court, this person read books to children. I wouldn't bring that. It'd be like, this person committed this act, and these are the witnesses, the evidence, this is the proof.
Witnesses? No, but going
there
back
could
to
be witnesses.
This is I taught at a public school. I work with public school children. I know what they teach. I have friends because I was there.
Yeah, but schools change all the time.
They do change
all
the
time. And
it's
based on an individual. It's not based on every teacher teaches this exact same thing.
But I'm saying, like, where in the curriculum, what do you think they're teaching about sodomy? Where does that happen?
I don't think there's any
school?
state-sponsored curriculum that teaches
that. No, there isn't.
that.
Of course there's not.
There's
Washington
individuals
just passed a law where
that do
they're
things like
allowing it in schools.
Allowing what?
The teaching of sodomy.
No, they're
I'm pretty sure it just
There's
passed.
no way that's the law. Like, I want to know what that law would be that you were referring to. That
Yeah, I don't have it off the top.
I mean,
That's fine.
there's plenty of teachers that have just been
But I just
self-admitting, saying
said-
they're teaching it.
You read that
Teaching
quote.
what?
I said if they are teaching that, though, in their two children in classrooms, that they should be shot in the back of the head, which would make them. They're teaching. They're corrupting children.
But you're making up something that doesn't exist. And again, my fear is
I don't think that's. I think there's plenty of examples.
My fear is there are people who are going to hear that and they say, "Well, I have a teacher that has a pride flag in the classroom." And my fear is they're going to jump to that conclusion without taking any of the steps.
That's a big leap. And,
it is a big leap,
and
but
we're
it
not,
shouldn't have
we're
it
not
in the classroom,
that.
though.
What?
Why should they have that in the classroom?
What, the pride flag?
Why
to let
is that
kids who
crap
are
being
gay,
put-
because that is the age when they figure
But is there
that
a
stuff
straight
out.
flag? Why don't we put a straight flag up?
Same reason
Is
you
there a
don't have
black
like
flag or a
preschoolers are gay,
Hispanic
right?
Do you
flag?
really need White History
Do
Month
we need
too?
Jan? Your
Why
Jane?
can't we
Jane?
What?
have White History Month?
Because
What's wrong
you're
with
in
white
the
people?
majority. You don't need it. For
Oh,
minorities.
we don't need it.
Do
Everybody
you?
else is
Are you
special
that
except for us.
insecure?
No, I'm just saying that like there's definitely a bias against white people now.
No, you're in the majority. So you're doing
right now.
fine.
But it's not
And
going to
what's
last.
going to happen if you become 40% of the population? Nothing.
Well, what do you see happening now?
Nothing.
White people are being,
Well, our country's
prejudiced
becoming a
against right
lot
now.
more or less Christian.
Yes.
It's definitely declining in some industries and in some areas.
Do you think Christians are persecuted?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Who would you rather be? If you're the victim,
I would never be a fag because
No,
that's
I'm saying
disgusting.
If you're missing my point. You're saying if Christians are persecuted, someone's got to be doing the persecuting. Like, which group do you think has it better than you guys do as Christians?
Well, here's the thing.
homos have it better because they got the
How?
red carpet rolled out for them over everything.
They
I
literally
don't
have to fight
look.
for their
I
rights
don't.
in
I
these
don't. I will
states.
agree with you that I think that being a homosexual in America, they're treated worse than I am.
Yes.
Because here's the thing: the vast majority of people like me. Like the vast majority of people I have positive interactions with. They're excited to see me or my kids or my family. I have really good interactions. Whereas I think most homosexuals, people are disgusted by them. They treat them poorly. They treat them badly. They're discriminated against.
You will never hear gay
And-
people, maybe some stupid off chance person, but like gay people are not saying let's execute these preachers, or that's what an ideal.
yeah, right.
I have
That's what
about
an
5,000
Let me show you my-
emails. I have
let me show you my
5,000
phone.
emails and voicemails that disagree with you.
Not trolls online. I'm saying like there's no, if there was a collective
Is
group.
every homo a troll? Well, here's the thing. I agree with you. I think homosexuals are probably treated worse, but that's because they're gross. They're disgusting. And so there's just it's
because
just
of assumptions you
no,
have
no, no.
made.
It's a natural reaction to be repulsed by those
Actually
individuals.
scientific.
So,
That's not
men
scientific.
men find effeminacy gross and repulsive. Men find men having a desire towards another man gross and
This is
repulsive.
another thing I find annoying about you guys, which is that you think something
Objectively-
and then you jump to
No,
this
no, no.
conclusion.
Wasn't
Everyone
there
thinks
an
this.
article that literally said that they did a brain scan study and they said when men see maggots, they have the same reaction to faggots, like when they're seeing like homosexual.
I
And they
promise
said,
you that's not a study. You show me that.
I want
study.
to pull up the article because there's a literal article that said that men. Someone can find it.
Published
Someone can
where?
find it and text it to me. There's an article that literally says that straight men have the same reaction to seeing maggots and dead flesh as to seeing two men kiss or seeing
if they're
some
not
kind of a
interested
homosexual
in it,
act.
I'm sure stuff they don't want
But
to do.
that's not
is-
like
who
them-
cares?
that's
You
their
said
just
you're
natural
not interested
inclination.
in it, right?
Right.
What do you feel when you see those types of things?
Where am I seeing these types of things?
Well, in
Like,
any film
I
on
don't-
Hollywood,
Twitter or anything.
I don't think it's like, all right, two guys, whatever. It's not my thing.
But like when you see it, I mean, obviously, most men that don't have those feelings at all, they're going to find it repulsive.
I don't think about it. It doesn't come up.
Oh man.
Okay, straight. Let's see if we can read the article. Straight men's physiological stress response to seeing two men kissing is the same as seeing maggots.
Straight men's.
Yeah, that was again, but that's the vast majority of
Okay,
of
so it's
people.
saying-
So I'm just saying this is a literal article.
You
and-
said men.
well,
But and my
yes.
point is, if you're-
obviously fags wouldn't
Oh
feel
my
that
God.
way. That was
my
implied.
point is, if you're saying like
they might even actually
if
find
two
it
guys if two guys don't want to see maggots and guys who are straight don't want to see gay men kissing, it's like, yeah, okay, they don't like it. Fine.
But I'm just saying, by our
I haven't read that. I don't know what it says.
the
but
context of this commentary was based on how homosexuals are probably treated worse in society,
Yeah.
and that's one of the evidences because people go to see movies all the time. They see chick flicks, they see men and women kissing, and they don't find that gross. Whereas when men see other men being affectionate towards each other, it's gross.
No,
they
to
feel
you.
awkward.
It's not.
It's like
any
it's
man.
disgusting. That's why the Bible said it's vile affections.
Adultery, you said, is the same type of sin, but I'm sure you've seen movies, TV shows where other men and women are doing something together. Are you repulsed by that? It's not.
Well,
your
it does.
wife.
It is. There's a certain level of disgust with it, but it's not the same. I would agree that it's not necessarily the same level of disgust. But yeah, if I found out, look, I found out people personally, like close to me, were committing adultery, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. I felt horrible about it. I was upset about it. I was disgusted by it. And it does make me feel really bad about that person. But it's not as bad as them being a homosexual. That's worse, objectively, for me, at least.
For you.
But again, I'm just saying.
You guys extrapolate then.
I would way rather be a Christian because Christians are treated better, generally speaking. But from a government perspective, if we just identify to the government, I think the government is not treating Christians as fairly as they do homosexuals. I think generally the populace treats me way better. The people like us.
What is it that you can't do as a Christian under the government?
Well, here's the thing. I can't use YouTube. And
that's not a government thing.
Yeah, but the government has been involved in dealing with the Twitter files and with other social medias.
The government doesn't own Twitter.
Yes, but the government went to these companies and told them specifically to censor content.
Group. No, it didn't.
I got banned from Twitter specifically, and Twitter files released that they had communications with the FBI in relation to censoring certain conservative accounts. Not only that, I have a lot of other, I'm not even going to say it all, but there's a lot of things that have happened to me, and I guarantee that the government's been involved in it. I have people that have told me specifically that the government has been dealing with some of these situations. So yes, I do believe that the government is not treating Christians as fairly as they are homosexuals, because I think there's a homosexual agenda being pushed by certain individuals in there. So yeah, from a government perspective, we're being persecuted. From a people perspective, no, I don't think so. People love Christians. I visit all kinds of countries. People love us. People treat us really great.
I'm trying to figure out like which state has laws that make it harder to be a Christian versus being anything else.
Well, there's Muslim countries and there's other countries that persecute Christians.
No. And I'm not defending like theocracies in other countries or anything like that. That's not okay either. I will grant you there are Christians literally persecuted in other countries. In here, in the U.S., though, like
it's coming up. I mean,
it's not though.
Well, I think in the Bible it alludes to it. It will happen.
Something I have found because
right now,
I write about this stuff.
It's not physical violence, but it's going to get to that level. And
would you call people out that were saying I think Christians should be put to death by the government?
Yes. Yeah. Why wouldn't I call that out?
I'm just curious.
That's horrible.
Okay. Well, and here's the thing. We've had a long conversation, and I appreciate you being willing to even talk with us. I am kind of curious, though, like why do you want to have this conversation? Like from your perspective, like me thinking I'm thinking he wants to get us to say something really awful in his mind that he can post on Twitter and get more views. I'm just kind of genuinely curious, like why would you want to have a conversation with us?
I'm fascinated by you guys. I think I'm just very intrigued by the way you preach, why you preach it. You strike me as people who I don't doubt your sincerity with the beliefs. I find them repulsive.
Have we preached anything that's loving?
Yes.
Have we preached anything that you agreed with?
I mean, general stuff, sure.
But when you say there's things that we preach that are repulsive, is this the vast majority of our preaching, in your opinion?
No, it's not.
It's just a handful of things.
But it's a lot of handfuls of things. And it's the stuff you get more excited about than other stuff. And again, there's a reason I think you do it more. If you spend more time on the caveats to all your horrible things and less time on they deserve the death penalty, it wouldn't be that interesting. But it's the gleefulness after like a tragedy. It's just a fascinating, horrible thing that drawn to like a car accident in a sense. And after years of watching those sermons and hearing this stuff, and it's like trying to sound the alarm. I want to talk to you now because I don't want to have to talk to you after someone in one of your congregations takes the wrong message and goes off and plays vigilante.
Hey, if someone commits murder, I'll condemn murder. You know, I'm not going to be happy about that, and I don't want someone to do that.
And I feel like in the same breath,
I hope that no one in my church or affiliated with any of our movement ever kills anybody for any reason. I don't even want it to be
agree.
self-defense, because I'm afraid that if someone defended themselves properly, that it would be twisted, and it would almost be like, oh, these guys are quick triggered, or they want to hurt people.
I believe you when you say that.
Because I don't want to hurt the message that we have.
Right.
I want genuinely for our government to change and to get back to biblical laws. And I think it's a far stretch. I don't think it's very likely. It's probably very unrealistic that it'll ever happen. But I think by us at least preaching what is right, what the Bible says, even though it's extreme, people hear that message, and then they hear the gospel, and then they end up getting saved. And so I think there's a net positive from even preaching some of the extreme things, because people hear about us. And, of course, we've gotten some attention. You know, you've helped us get some attention.
For better or for worse, and I've gotten pushback on that.
And I'm sure a lot of people will be mad at that. But at the end of the day, like, I think it's just all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. So you're helping us get the gospel to many people.
That's the criticism I've gotten. But my fear is the next time I talk to you guys, it'll be because someone in your congregation took the law into their own hands, because they know even if you condemn what they are doing or what they did, you're still going to celebrate the fact that it happened.
Are you afraid of hell?
No, I don't think about hell. That's my fear, though. Do you understand? That's my fear. Well, that's my concern. That someone's going to take a message that you tell me right now, you do not intend for that message to go through to them.
That's because that's not the message.
Right. But that is what they are going to hear, because they do it all the time, and they're going to do it. And I want you guys to take that concern seriously.
So that when you flip that concern back to you.
Yeah.
Now, you've put multiple things out there, and then some things get traction that you put on there, and then some things don't. But, of course, what I said, 2 Novembers ago, about the Colorado shooting, when you posted that went mega viral. And I'm not sure if it's the exact same time as you went on your excursion out to the woods, and you said, you came back and you're like, oh yeah, I had such a great time out in the mountains. And I'm like, well, I pray that you get eaten by mountain lions and bears or something like that. And then your followers got all upset about it. But here's the thing. Let me just put this.
I didn't even know that.
Let me put this in a little context. You remember that?
I vaguely remember.
Okay, so let me put this in a little context for you. So when that went viral, all your people that listened to that, and all the millions of people that viewed those things, they're not getting you. You only paint one picture, that we're these evil hate preachers that are wanting death to be taken out on people.
Which you are, by the way.
No. But the way you frame it a lot of times is that we're
advocating
murder on gays. But that's not what we say. So hold on a second.
You are.
Just let me finish here.
Okay.
So you come home from a great weekend. You saw nature, and it was all great. But you know what was happening to me that weekend? I was getting nonstop phone calls, people harassing me night and day. I had to turn my phone off. And I'm getting all these queer pictures from all these queers that are saying how they're going to kill me and my family, naming my children, naming my in-laws and my daughter-in-laws and my son-in-laws. And they're telling me all these different ways how they're going to torture them and kill them. And I'm watching my back, never going through something as bad as I've ever gone through with that weekend. And then I look on Twitter, and you're like, oh, greatest weekend ever. And I'm like, well, I hope your weekend goes really bad. So that's what I went through. And so think about the responsibility that you have when you clip those things together the way you do. What if you're responsible for one of us getting killed and our family members? How are you going to feel about that? Because in reality, I don't think anything that we've ever said that these people are getting protested the way we are. We're not having people with AR-15s are not showing up at people's doorsteps or showing up at people's church buildings and surrounding them.
My son doesn't do guns.
But what I'm saying to you...
Yeah, but we don't have Christians mobbing you at your residence, do we?
It has happened. Not because of you guys.
Right.
As a public
figure.
But
the point I'm making is that you've made our life more dangerous than we've made to anybody.
By quoting you.
You're saying that you're quoting us, but that's not always a direct quote. Saying
they are video clips.
You're saying hate preacher says all teachers should be shot in the back of the head.
And then I show the clip.
But you don't ever include our
carefully
caveats.
edited.
It's not edited. It's
the quote.
It's not always exact quotes, and sometimes you say that gays should be killed or murdered.
Let's correct this. If you said gays should not be executed, and I clipped out the word not, that's selective editing. when I say this is a thing you said, which
I've actually copy and pasted things that you said and said this is what I actually said. And it wasn't.
I think there's a little bit of editorializing to some of your
only
quotes.
to shorten a clip if it's too long.
But you're sensationalizing it.
It is what you said. You
never tell the other side. Like you said, he said, "Do we ever preach anything that's good?" It's everything with you is always ultra negative. But we don't only preach negative sermons. I preached a sermon last week that was 50 things that happen when you get saved. It was a positive sermon.
It was. I saw that one.
Yeah, there was nothing negative about it. I mean, how's that negative?
It's not.
It's not. But like that never gets told. It's just we're hate preachers, and then my phone's getting blown up. I'm putting security cameras around my house.
Do you feel bad about that?
No. If there's a swimming pool and someone shits in a corner of the swimming pool, and here's me saying, "Look over here." I think that's a valid thing to point out, and you're trying to.
But do you see the hypocrisy in what you're doing, though?
No. Because
you're actually
what you're
getting
saying
people to
is,
try
look at the rest of the pool. And I'm saying, I don't care about the rest of the pool. That's fine. If that's all you did, we would never have this discussion. But look over here, because this is a problem. If I was taking you out of context.
Yeah, but
I've been preaching the Bible for 8 years and nobody's ever committed a crime like you're saying might happen, could happen, all this other stuff.
Guy literally got arrested because
but let's say a guy eats Indian food and he has an accident.
Watch yourself.
Okay. And then the pool. And then there's another guy that's literally just taking feces and just dumping it in there. And you're just like, this evil person's trying to ruin the pool. Well, one context is a lot different than the other. And what he's trying to point out is that our context is never being added to some of your statements to make them less dramatic. So
if it makes you feel better,
I think that you're personally trying to make them as dramatic as possible for attention and followers,
no, I don't
not
get
caring
followers.
about the consequence of what would happen to us specifically.
I personally don't think you'd feel bad if we got killed, and I think
I would, because I don't
to me,
want that
I'm
to
like,
happen.
you're trying to get me killed. That's kind of how I feel, and so when I'm lashing out at you, that's why. Because I feel like, well, if I'm getting all these death threats, did you get death threats that weekend? Because I sure as hell didn't.
I think it's fair.
It pisses me off.
I think, and fine, but I think it's fair to quote you directly and say, this is what someone is preaching at a church. This is what they said. Based on this conversation, I haven't taken you out of context. I haven't.
Do you ever put the caveat in there?
Yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
I've seen you do it a couple times, but you don't do it every time.
The caveat being they believe the government should execute XYZ people. Yeah, that caveat is in there.
Well, that's why I asked you if you know the difference between, an execution or a capital punishment and murder, because sometimes you'll say murder, but we're not saying for people to murder people. So, but
You're
that's
not
how
asking
people are taking it.
I'm saying
because
it right
if people
now.
are blowing up my phone saying, "Well, you should be murdered,"
I think
you're not taking responsibility for the people that are messaging me.
I think you're making a big distinction between the government-sanctioned murder that you wish
not murder,
would be in
though.
place. It's the same thing. Death penalty is government-sanctioned murder.
No,
versus
it's
people
killing,
taking the law into their own hands.
It's lawful killing.
It's lawful
for
killing.
a capital
Fine.
crime.
Call it whatever you want.
Do you think
but
people
it's
should be put to death for
execution.
rape?
Huh?
Rape?
No, I want them locked away. If they are guilty of it,
But what are they doing?
what?
Letting them out. Letting them out to do it again. Right after they do it.
If you want to have an argument about like the justice system as it applies to those people, we could have that conversation. It's a different conversation.
Well, I think they should be killed.
And
lawfully. After they get found guilty for it. That's
different
what the Bible
conversation. Different conversation. But to your point, I don't think I'm taking you guys out of context. I do include the caveats.
I think you do a good job for the most part. I think you do a good job for the most part, but there are times when you're putting your own spin to it,
But if
and
you're
I think
so
you're responsible for how you spin it.
If you're so bothered by your own words, then
I'm
change
not bothered
your own
by my
words.
own words. I'm bothered by how you spin it and the context in which you're giving it.
You're saying the spin is me clipping your own videos and sharing
No,
them with
I'm not
people.
ashamed of anything I preach.
Right. But
Unless I say something wrong, of course, then
Right.
I'd be ashamed of that, and I'm willing to take it back.
If
But
you
Yeah, I mean,
didn't make it so
does the
easy.
news media ever take Trump out of context? Like when he brings up things like it's going to be a bloodbath, but doesn't context matter to that statement?
Sure it does. And when he says that sort of thing over and over in repeated ways, like what do you think he's doing?
Yeah,
It's
but if
not
he
a
says,
metaphor
if he says,
at that
"Hey,
point.
if we print more money, our economy is going to be bad. It's going to be a bloodbath." That sounds different than if I say like, "Hey, we need to take these people out and kill them. It's going to be a bloodbath." Doesn't that change things?
I get your point. It's a fair point. With Trump, a lot of times it's, you guys, it's not one time out of context. Because believe me, if the example you just gave of the economy, inflation, bloodbath, that's one thing. If that's all it did, believe me, plenty of people would be like, stop making a big deal out of that. That's not the thing to focus on. When he starts using certain language, let's take out these people. That sort of language in different contexts over and over. It's like, this is part of a pattern. This is who he is. I think that's fair to call out. This is the same thing with the sermon.
Yeah, but aren't you addressing or believing that we don't have a pattern of suggesting murder?
Say that again.
Do we have a pattern of suggesting murder?
You do it all the time.
Or are we suggesting capital punishment, though? Wouldn't you
murder?
I mean, we're using, yeah, but isn't murder?
You're saying murder.
Isn't murder the unlawful killing of someone that's
Would you
a
feel
premeditated?
better if I said, "Here's Pastor Thompson calling for government-sanctioned"?
I would just say executed. Yeah, that sounds
death
great.
penalty for capital crime.
We just want us to be quoted directly.
I know, and I'm saying I don't think that makes as big of a difference as
but if
you think
say
it does.
murder, that changes the definition. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it's going to be bad. I'll use execution if it makes you feel
that
better.
would actually
then
make
these
me feel
freaks that
better.
you think are such great people. I mean, I could show you thousands of texts that I got saying, and I've posted some of them on your Twitter page, unless you have me blocked or something. But I mean, where I'm showing, them saying, "I'm going to kill you," or "I'm going to kill you and your wife," or
awful.
Yeah,
Awful.
but that's okay.
I condemn that completely.
But what if someone actually does it? Because
I've gone through it.
But what I'm trying to say is that it's the same thing. You're saying that you're afraid that one day, maybe, possibly, that this might happen, which it never has.
Yet, right?
It never has. But you actually have people literally threatening us, literally showing up at our churches with AR-15s, screaming at our children.
We should ban AR-15s.
Which is actually
no,
we shouldn't. But which is actually we should ban freaks from being able to intimidate people from walking into your church.
I agree.
In the civil rights, you know why they passed laws about that? Because they were burning crosses in their church yards and bombing their churches. Guess what? You know what? That's happened to us too. Not crosses, but bombing our churches.
You have a right to meet. You have a right to.
Sorry,
all right, so we're talking in circles. I want to kind of wrap up, but here's the thing: I want to give our audience one opportunity. If you want to put a question in here, it's got to be a fair question. I'm not just going to ask anything that you put in there. But if you want to ask a question to any of the parties here, we might address them. So if you have a question, and we'll give them just a second here to put something in there. But I
probably have a hard out in 10 minutes. Just
no problem.
Okay.
We need to wrap up anyways. So if somebody has a quick question and this is your opportunity to put it in the chat, I'm going to look here for the next few minutes. But I do want to say thank you to at least having the conversation.
Thanks to both
and
of
it
you.
seems like you are sincere as far as just your intentions. I mean, I think that it's incredible that you watch as many sermons as you do.
Me too.
Because I personally thought you had a team. Like I'm just saying, like, for sure, I thought like people were sending you clips at least or something, because that's just a lot. Like, I feel like you literally watch everything.
You have so many. Why do you do so many sermons? You could do like one a week. You'll be fine.
I mean, you were watching sermons that I'm thinking like, I can't believe he watched that sermon all the way through, because I was even boring for the first half of it. And I'm thinking like, how did you
Do you watch on fast speed?
I've watched everything on fast speed. Not sermons. I watch movies on fast speed.
All right, someone has this question. Do you have a recommended list of books or a recommended book?
I assume that means for atheism or something.
This is just general.
If it's about religion, I would say Breaking the Spell by Daniel Dennett is a good primer for like how to think about things. That's a good one. If you're curious about evolution, I don't love Dawkins, but The Ancestor's Tale was a good non-atheism related, but it's about evolution. I like that one.
Any books outside of religious?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm reading the Robert Caro, Lyndon Johnson books. They're really good.
Have you ever read The Bridge at Andau?
No.
I think you would like it. You should. That's a recommendation I always give to people.
What's it called?
The Bridge at Andau.
Okay.
It's like Andau. It's about the Hungarian Revolution in the 50s in regards to communism. So
interesting.
I think it's a great read.
I am not familiar with it.
Someone also wants to ask why you got married.
I don't know if that's like a trick question.
It's not a trick question. Why did you get married and have kids?
Because I love my wife.
Hey, that's a good answer. Do you believe in objective reality? Objective reality. I'm sorry.
I don't know what that means. I don't do philosophy. Not my thing. I don't have a good answer for whoever asked that question.
Yeah, I don't. It's pretty. That would be a big.
I'm not even knocking the question. There's people. If I go on like an atheist show where they ask those types of questions. Like, I'm not the guy to answer them because it's not something I spend time thinking about. You know this. I spend time on politics and what people do with their beliefs, and not so much the philosophy, theology behind all that.
Someone wants to know if you listen to the hymns too and the announcements.
Nope.
You just skip straight to the sermon? Yep. Okay. Do you sing any of the hymns?
Nope.
Do you like any of the hymns?
Oh. No.
Okay. All right. I was just curious. A lot of questions I'm not going to ask, but
thank you. I can imagine.
No, we've had over 300 people in the chats, so watching just on Rumble alone. So I'm sure this is going to be a pretty highly anticipated show. A lot of people were really shocked that we were going to have this conversation, myself included.
Same.
I think it's gone well, honestly.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate the conversation.
This person says, if you're an atheist, why do you not devote your life to pleasure?
Here's a general question. I'm not knocking the question. What do you think I would do? What does that person think atheists do when they don't believe in God? Because I've heard a lot of Christian apologists say something like, you just want to sin, you just want to do this.
I don't know that I would do necessarily anything different from a pleasure perspective.
Yeah.
I think if I was an atheist, though, I wouldn't waste my time listening to my sermons.
Hey, you're not the only one.
So
who said that to me.
So yeah, like why?
I feel like I can provide something useful when I'm saying this is what some people are doing with their beliefs. I do it with politics too, at the state level sometimes. Here's a person you've never heard of. It's a state representative in a state you probably don't pay attention to. This is a bill they sponsored because of their religion, and I find it really harmful. I find that useful. In the same way, I don't think a lot of people are necessarily who are outside your circles are watching those sermons. But if that's a service I can provide to people, that this is being said in the name of God, and it's harmful, and I can show that to people, then maybe I can offer them something they can't find anywhere else. And by the way, they can always go see it for themselves. I mean,
why and when did you become an atheist?
High school is when I started doubting my faith, and it kind of just solidified slowly after that.
Are your parents still practicers of
Yes,
Jan?
they are religious.
Or Jane? How
Yes.
do you say it?
Jane.
Jane,
They're still religious, yeah.
Do you have siblings?
I do.
How many?
I have one sister.
Okay. Do you believe life has intrinsic value?
Depends on what intrinsic value means. Like, no, it's life. I mean, glad I'm here.
Someone wants to ask about Zionism, but I think it would be a better question to just say, do you think that there's a problem with how much AIPAC or potentially like Israeli dual citizens have control in our government? Do you think that's a problem at all?
I don't like the lobby that is the AIPAC is problematic. I mean, if you're a progressive Democrat, then AIPAC has not been on your side on a lot of things. So like, I have a lot of problem with the Israeli government.
What about the ADL?
They've been horrible.
Okay. What about this? Someone asked,
I agree.
what do you think about the flat earth? But I would want to change that a little bit. What about people who believe in flat earth? Like, how would you explain someone having that view from your perspective?
How would I explain that they shouldn't be flat earthers?
No, like, why do they even exist? Like, how does someone come to that conclusion
It's
from
the same
your
reason
perspective?
people fall for different conspiracy theories. I think when you can latch onto something that everyone else knows is wrong, but in your subculture, in the circles you can run in, because flat earth being one of them, there are some people who buy into that, and they all know each other because they all follow each other.
It's like a cool rebellion club or
Sure.
something.
And they feel really smart because in that circle of people, they know stuff and they're confident. And like, people want a sense of belonging. I would argue that's why a lot of people join churches too. Like, you feel like you're part of something that matters to a lot of people. And if it's not church, but they're part of some flat earth group of people in some forum somewhere or a subreddit somewhere, they feel like they are part of something where we all agree on this. And it's really hard to find that sort of community. So pick your conspiracy theory. You'll find people for that reason.
Well, I'm gonna end on this last question, and I think it's pretty interesting question. It said, what would you do if your kids got saved? And I would kind of reword this. What if your kids listened to our sermons and actually liked them and agreed with them?
I would be disturbed. I would talking out of it is the wrong thing, but it's like assuming they're old enough to make their old decision. Like, I don't have control over that. I hope they're doing good things with their lives, whatever it is they're doing. At that point, like, I don't own them. Like, it's their life. Be good. I hope whatever values I taught you, you are still carrying forth. It's entirely possible. They probably think my kids are young. They are soon going to be at the point where I'm wrong about everything. So, like, I know it's going to happen. And if they believe I'm wrong about the atheism thing, that's not surprising either. It happens a lot. What do you hope? You hope you taught them the right values and they're using those. It's not something I would spend much time thinking about.
Did they watch the sermons with you?
They do not.
Okay. Well, so
you should let them.
Yeah, I think so too.
Not on my worst enemies.
Just at least let them watch the salvation.
No.
Okay. Just the gospel message, if anything.
Would you be afraid that they would believe it?
No, I try not to have them watch any of it.
Okay.
They don't know what I do
Or
either.
watch the Preserved Bible. All right. Well, is there anything you want to plug before we end?
Hey, friendlyatheist.com is my site if you want to read what I write. That's it.
What about the Only Sky thing or something?
That was a site I used to write for. It's no longer in business. I just do my own thing now.
Oh, okay.
So friendlyatheist.com is me if you're interested.
All right. Pastor Thompson, thanks for joining us for the conversation.
Absolutely. It was fun.
I appreciated you being here.
Can I plug something?
Plug your church. Plug whatever.
Well, we're having some preaching tonight at 6:00, and I'll be preaching at the.
Are you gonna be listening?
At the place?
No, I'm taking a break for days.
I'm not saying it publicly, but yeah, we're gonna be streaming. Hopefully, you'll be streaming on the Steadfast channel.
Yeah, Rumble Steadfast channel.
And we're gonna try to stream also on YouTube. I'm not sure what channel. Probably Sure Foundation Seattle or something. But anyway, also there's soul winning tomorrow in Cicero. And we have all the location, times, and all that. If you need to know where it's at, just email the church, Sure Foundation, sfbcindy@gmail.com. But tonight, me and Pastor Shelley will be preaching 6:00, so tune in if you can. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks,
and you find SureFoundationBaptist.com?
Sure Foundation Baptist.
Okay, great.
BaptistChurch.com.
Yeah, thanks for watching us on the Baptist Bias. Make sure to share it. You can follow me on Twitter at BandPastor. I'm ghost banded, so you have to go directly to it. And you got to check it out because I put some good info. Although I don't have many followers, it's hard to get a lot of followers on there. But thanks so much for joining us. Look, everyone's got a perspective out there, but you need to get the Baptist Bias.